We're live. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Saturday the 30th. Martin, the bottle 2 weeks away. The wall's going. All right. I want to get the link posted. There's my notifications from one YouTube. There's one from the other. YouTube does great about notifications. Facebook, not so much. Yeah, I got this. On Facebook, yeah. Man, every time I do this, man, I open up the pages like I want to read that. This one's on geology. Red hot phantom octahedral fluorite with candle quartz crystals, man. Guess they, oh shit. Guess they have a group. I'm a member of that hunts crystals all over the place. It's amazing stuff. So bear with me just a minute. Let me get these links out. Y'all know the drill. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. Yeah, it's a nice looking crystal. So what's everybody got going on this weekend? Get these links out. Hope everybody had a good Wednesday. I hope y'all watched that Phil Billy interview. I didn't know that was happening, or I wouldn't even have started my podcast. I would just send everybody a message to go there. But at least I got a chance to share the link so everybody could go watch it. Anytime Phil or Tom or Damon's on there, getting interviewed or something, I'm always gonna give those guys their due, man. Definitely not gonna take away from their minute, their moment. And I'm gonna have to eventually do what I say and see if there's a quick way of doing this. I can just set it all up. Every time I ask AI about it, they can give me a good answer. Y'all ever mess with AI? Something big and new. A lot of people are dealing with. It's getting kind of crazy. All the stuff you can do on there, man. I hadn't checked it out. It's pretty interesting. I know a lot of people are either for it or against it. I guess it can be used for good things or bad things. I guess depending on how it's used, it can be pretty wild. I've heard some pretty weird, scary kind of stories about, people interacting with AI and asking them questions and stuff, and and I'm sure a lot of it's just a lot of BS to drum up some watchers or something, but some of it looks pretty legit. I do know that when you ask it about Jesus and stuff, it gets kind of funny. And I notice a lot of the artwork when I ask it to do something with a gun in it, it never gets the guns right, man. They're always messed up. Two handles, two triggers, two hammers, two barrels. Not supposed to be. It's a lot of different things. It's like, why is that doing that? Hope that way gets up properly. Hmm. Let me post a link more than it normally lets me. See if it'll let me put that in the shine on. Yeah, it did. Cool. Usually it doesn't let me do this, Penny. Maybe they let me do more on good behavior. Okay, that's about all I. This is. Right. If it's the same one, let's see. Is it waiting on post approval? Yeah, I can't post it on this one. That's the end of that. All right, I'm back. What's going on, Captain Phil? What's going on, Curtis? Leroy, what's up? Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people working on apples. Talking to a buddy earlier, man, he's got like pallets to grind. He's going through them like butter right now. You're gonna have to get a tote, brother. Just get you a tote and crush all them apples in it, get them going. Add the sugar, stir it up good. Make sure you dissolve your sugar good before you add it. And dissolve it in apple juice, not water. Don't water it down. A lot of people I see, they chop up their apples, they get the apple juice, and they go to all the expense, and then the first thing they do, they start dumping water on top of it. Apple juice is pretty cheap. You get it about, I don't know, $1, almost a half gallon for $1, a couple dollars a gallon. Get you a few gallons of that and heat it up and dissolve your sugar in that, and while you at it, throw in a few of those frozen concentrate, add some of those to it. Concentrate those flavors. Don't dilute them with water, and you'll get some more flavor out. A lot of people, expect it tastes like apple pie, like a lot of people make them. You don't, like I say, in a brandy, if you can tell what fruit it was made with when you drink it, that's a good brandy, right? If you can taste the fruit and tell exactly what it is, then I consider that a fairly successful brandy. You know, a lot of people have drank a lot of post-flavored stuff and sweetened up and post-flavored that just smack you with that flavor, just knock you down with the sweetness and the strength and the, you know, and that's, you know, you don't get that. You get a hint and you get subtle notes and, you know, like Wesley's Sandman uh, is blackberry. You know, it was about as much flavor as you're gonna get out of a blackberry without cheating, you know, and any more than that, you know, it's just, but it was really good. You know, he with the jar rigs, you know, and infusions done right, you can get pretty decent flavor, you know, but just getting that knocked down flavor, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get flavor that's just gonna smack you. You know, it's just doesn't happen. Awesome, brother. Bet you're excited. Yeah, I know you are. If that's still going, that's awesome. So hope everybody's having a good weekend. A little slow tonight. Everybody's out partying, I guess. Everybody's out doing something. Usually we got 20 or 30 in here right now. I wouldn't have as many as usual. I hope they're all out enjoying themselves. Like I say, most people, you know, with this podcast, maybe 5% watch it live, if that. It's, you know, as far as the numbers go, it's not even that really. Uh, you know, sometimes I'll have 20, 30, 40 people watching live, you know, but most people catch it later on. You know, the Facebook gives you all the logistics and stuff, at least on Facebook. I know YouTube probably even more so this way. I think more people on YouTube actually watch the video later than on Facebook. I think more people watch it live on Facebook than on YouTube. But I'm getting both. And something new we have, I'm going to introduce. Let's see if it's working. Somebody comment. Let's see what. I'm going to try to use show comments on stage. So if somebody can make me a testing 1, 2, 3 comment, let's see if it puts it up here. But I want to see. But anyway, yeah, most of my people watch the show, you know, at their own convenience later on in the week, during the week, whatever. You know, I'll get, like I say, 20 or 30, sometimes 40. You know, but according to the statistics, it's not even 10%. That's over 500 watch it every week. Somewhere between, usually it's between 500 and 1,100. I think at one time I had more than 1,100, but that was about the average high is 1,000, 1,100, and then, you know, the average is every week consistently 500, 600. But yeah, a lot of people watch it after hours. And all right, can y'all see these comments on the screen? I see it popping them up there, but they're not very big. What's going on, Ray Ray? And thanks for posting that, Scott. Can y'all see these comments on the screen? Because what I'd like for it to be able to happen is, let me see if I can. It doesn't help much. That doesn't change a thing. Oh well. Hopefully, a lot of people will. Is it too small to read? Yeah. Let's see if I can make. Let me see if I can get it this and make it bigger. Maybe if I make me smaller, I can make it bigger. Did that change anything for you all? Yeah, that made my whole screen go big. I can't do that. I'm gonna mess something up here, old fuck. Oh, okay, there we go. We're back to normal. It didn't get bigger. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Well, we'll work on it. Let's see. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. That didn't do a thing. That didn't help. No. 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 We need to make this little text box over here bigger for people to see. The reason I like it is, I guess if you're on a PC, maybe. Is anybody on a PC? Can you see it on a PC? Because what I would like for it to do is, I know a lot of times people on Facebook can only see comments that are made on Facebook, and people that are on YouTube can only see comments from people that are on YouTube. So this, you're on the cell phone. Is anybody on a PC? Most people watch on the phones. So that's cool. But anyway, it's got the comments, and so if no matter if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can see the comments other people are making, because a lot of times I hear people say, well, I didn't see that comment. Who said that? Or where are you getting that at? Or who said that? Was that in another group or what? So hopefully we can get this in StreamYard. If you're listening, we need this bigger. We need to increase the size of this, or the ability to. Oh, did you really? Oh no. And I've got this photo right here, man, handy. This is boom. It's what we posted last time. There's your buddy. Man, I hate that. Man, those things are bad, bad, bad. They'll make a murder hornet look like a bitch. Probably not, but they're badass. Doing them apples, man. That's they love those apples. Sweet corn and brown sugar. That's awesome, man. Now, what are we gonna call that? Now, I know when you do like a grain and a brandy combo, they call that a mountain brandy. I wonder what happens when you do a grain and a rum combo. Mountain rum. I guess that's what. Man, those damn things, man, they'll light your ass up. Uh, yeah, last time I got into them, I was mowing outside, and right next to the concrete there was a little hole, and I think it was. I don't think it was always a bee hole. I think it started out like chipmunk hole or something else, or a mow hole, and then the bees just decided they was going to take it over, because it'd been there a long time and I never had any problem with it. But I mowed over it one time. By God, some bitch lit me up. They was all around me. I left that mower right on top of it, on purpose to try to kill them all, or kill what they could as it's coming out. But man, there was a cloud around that mower for a long time. And yeah, I got a little string I tied knots, so I don't have to keep that thing pulled down so the motor runs. So it runs. All I do is actuate the front wheel drive. But yeah, oh yeah, it'll be good. It sounds good. I'm sure it'll be fine. It especially with brown sugar instead of like molasses, it can get a bit grungy. A lot of people like the grunge, and I like grunge. It depends on the grunge, I guess, but I like a grungy flavor. And a lot of people, will use that blackstrap or molasses and get a pretty grungy note. But brown sugar's not bad. I've done a lot with brown sugars actually. I've done it with apples and other things. In some of my pineapples, I did it with pineapples. Did it with apples. I've done it with a few of the fruits that I've done. I guess those would be brandy rums or whatever. But yeah, I like using brown sugar sometimes with some of the fruits and stuff. Worked out well with the apples and with the pineapple. Liked them both. I don't think, yeah, I didn't put any brown sugar with my banana. I just went with regular sugar. But usually I'll do sugar with those. But with the grains, I'll always use dextrose. Yeah, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it gives it a little bit of extra, something different. You can taste that note, you can taste it. It's something a little bit different than just your everyday, apple. Kind of caramel-ish grunge, more of a grunge than a caramel, but not a burnt sugar. I've heard people talk about, I think last night people were talking about a burnt sugar. Were they talking about doing something with burnt sugar? Last night, I don't remember. Help me out, Tex. You remember somebody talking about burnt sugar or something last night? Doing something with burnt sugar. I don't know if they were burning sugar for flavor or about the time we was talking about that smoking the cheese and stuff. Somebody mentioned it. But anyway, we're going to talk StreamYard, and hopefully we can get this comment thing enlarged. Or Damon, if somebody's watching that knows how to make that larger. A little help would be appreciated. But yeah, we'll talk to StreamYards and we'll see if we can't at least make it to where it's like that. Right? No, damn it. No, like that. No. At least the same size as the picture I'm in, right? So it can take up, maybe a third over here of the screen and make it a little larger for people to see. Post. I would infuse with it. Or I'd add some uh, Monin or Tirani caramel, vanilla caramel, or whatever. They got some, not sure which one it is. They got a caramel. I'm not sure if it's Tirani or Monin. I think it's Tirani. But they've got some good vanilla and caramel, salted caramel. That's a Tirani salted caramel. That's what it is. That's good. That's what I would add, and I'd post with it. I'm getting to the point where people expect more than just the brandy. Old timers. When you give them a brandy, they're expecting to barely have a hint of flavor of the fruit, and just enough to know what it is. But a lot of people, today when they drink brandy, they're expecting a lot of flavor, like a post flavored, mixed drink, and if that's what they want, give it to them. I mean, everybody's so anti post flavoring, and it's like it's called a mixed drink. They've been doing it a long time, Now don't try to pass it off as not though. That's the biggie. Everybody sees the color and the sweetness. Just don't say, yeah, this is 100 proof moonshine. It's not. It's a mixed drink. So even if it's a high proof, it's just a high proof mixed drink. But a lot of people are dead set against it. And I used to be one of those people. I used to be all hardcore. It's got to be clear, cloudy. No, can't even be cloudy. And then I started reading more about looshing and how some of those oils are good to keep, and even if it does cloud up, there's a lot of flavor in some of those oils. So, and some of the best things I've ever made, kind of got oily when the proof started getting a little bit lower, under 130 actually. You get 120 and it started to get oily, and I compressed a lot of oils into intentionally into the distillate to kind of stack those flavors, because there's a lot of flavors in those oils, especially on this specific one. It was my grappa, and so it made it great. That doesn't work on everything, not all those, low oils and low wines are going to be all that great, but pretty good. And as it ages, it gets even better. So that's what I do. I just get me some of that, and I've got some. If y'all want to see it, I'm walk over and grab it. Let me do that. I've got quite a few different ones I use. Be right back. I don't know why I have a headset on anyway. All right. There's some hazelnut. That's good. And it's just grenadine. If y'all have never, it's good syrup. It's good for mixing drinks. This is just plain old vanilla to give you some vanilla notes. There's the salted caramel I was telling you about. That's good stuff. And let's see. Ronnie Peach. Good stuff. What I should have used to infuse with last time, but I used this instead. It's Olive Nation Peach. It's pretty concentrated. Strawberries, not a real big carryover. I'd say, cooking up strawberry or dehydrating. Best way to do it would be what do you mean, YT? YouTube or there's YT some kind of flavoring? Tell me, Scott. Um, yeah, I like using the syrup or dehydrated text. If you got strawberries and you can dehydrate them, those work a lot better than just like a strawberry. There's just not a lot of sugar in a strawberry. It's got some flavor to it, but there's just hardly any sugar in there, and it just doesn't carry forward with that knock you out. So using the syrups that are concentrated or drying them out, you know, works a lot better. If you got a dehydrator, to just dry them out, take all the liquid out of them. That way, when you infuse with it, it soaks up that alcohol and it gives it back up, and it seems to carry a little bit more flavor that way. But yeah, dehydrating is a good way. But also, if you have a small thumper, that's good. If you have a big ass thumper, man, it's going to be so expensive to try to get the volume that you need in there to get good coverage on the vapor. You follow me? Because if you got a big ass thumper, that's like 5 gallons or 10 gallons, you've got the pipe in there and the flavor comes straight up. It only exposes itself to the bubble in the area that it comes up. So all this other stuff around it doesn't get used, and it's leaving water behind, so it gets watered down. And it's just, if you can concentrate it into a smaller infuser instead of a big thumper, because it just takes so much syrup or whatever to fill a big ass thumper, to get that flavor carry forward. Whereas with a smaller infuser, you can add it and let it run, let a quart run or two, quart and a half or two, and then drain it, get all that water off, and then reinfuse and keep, keep the concentrations up. Whereas if you're in a thumper, it's hard to do that. You're dumping out a lot. Hey April, how you doing? Better off using, I guess you mean YouTube. We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook, we're on Kick, we're on Twitch. Sometimes we do Rumble. I don't fool with it because it has to be manually set up, and I'm not going to fool with it. But they can figure out a way to get that where they can have people link straight through with software, then that'll be good. Until then, Rumble can kiss my tail. They just making it too difficult. Kick, they got their stuff together. You can do the same, Rumble. But yeah, we stream to Facebook, YouTube, a lot of different channels and groups on Facebook. Couple on YouTube, Phil Billy's and the militia page on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and sometimes Rumble. But not for me. I don't know. I guess Damon set that shit up every time. I'm not for it. So I'm assuming you mean YouTube. Yeah, we're on YouTube too. No, I guess I'm not, brother. You gotta put it in plain English for me. How do you distill peaches? Well, you make a peach wine, and then distill the peach wine and infuse with peaches and syrups. You can mix. You can take puree peaches and mix with the syrup. You put that in your infuser. It helps carry flavor forward. I tried this last year for the farm to bottle competition. Somebody told me that the Tirani was, or the Olive Nation was really good. So I usually use this, and I have had fairly good results with it. But I tried this, and I don't know if I just got the wrong kind or what, but it really didn't carry much forward except an odd sweet flavor, kind of like a bubblegummy flavor, sweet bubblegummy. Do you? So anyway, Michael, I just make a regular peach wine, and it's great. Just as a wine, it's good. It can get a little dry, but once that happens, most distillers, when it gets dry, they just distill, right? But when you're winemaking, you can add some potassium sorbate to it, and doesn't kill the yeast, but it keeps them from reproducing. So they just die naturally, and then they don't reproduce anymore. So eventually, you run out of yeast because they only have a short life cycle, right? So if you use that potassium sorbate, they just get neutered. They can't reproduce, so they just die off. And once they do that, then you can back sweeten it with some peach flavoring if you want to increase the peach flavor. But with your wines, you'll have a pretty good peach flavor. It just won't be sweet because it's dry, right? Because you let it ferment out and the yeast ate all the sugar. So then you just what's known as a back sweetening. So you can take either some of this syrup and cook it up with a little bit of water and some sugar, and add that into your wine to sweeten it up a little bit. Man, it's really good. But if you're diabetic, it's probably not something that you want. So you definitely have to ask and let people know that it's been sweetened. But no, you can get some peach flavor. It's just not going to be like smack you, knock you down, really sweet, heavy peachy flavor. With infusion jars, it gets better. If you got like a triple jar rig, and you infuse in all three of those, by the time it picks up a little bit more each jar, and you can get some pretty decent peach flavor, but it's just not going to smack you down. It's not going to be a really strong peach flavor I've seen a lot of brandies in the stores, and you can tell by looking at them that ain't no clear liquor, right? And a lot of those have been post flavored and sweetened, and they do pretty much what I was talking about. They'll sweeten it up post flavor, and kind of messes with the alcohol reading, but they don't really care about that. But yeah, they'll post flavor in some of those brandies that you get, the 60 proof ones, and some of those low proof ones. But yeah, you're not gonna get a real strong smack you down. I mean, you can tell you're drinking peach, right? I mean, you can taste the peach in it. It's just not going to be concentrated like a peach Kool-Aid or a peach cooler or something like that. It's just not going to have that kind of knock you down flavor, right? But if it's done right and it's done well, mine used the Solve Nation last year. It wasn't. You could drink it. It had a good flavor to it. It just didn't have any peach carry for it, at all. And I depended on solely on that. I didn't puree any peaches. I didn't do any syrups or anything like that. I just solely used this alone, and it brought some sweetness forward. Some kind of, maybe that's sugar free, and it had some artificial sweetener that carried forward. It made a pretty decent sweet shine, but it was just wasn't a peach flavor. It was kind of like I said, a bubblegummy flavor, just an odd sweetness. I mean, it made a good drink. It's good tasting. It's just not peach, and that's you're not going to win a peach contest if you don't have some kind of peach flavor, and it didn't. And I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to try to sneak in some drops or some syrup or something like that to try to fix what I messed up. And I did it like the week before, the week of farm to bottle, so it's not like I could rerun it and do another batch. So pretty much the same thing this year with the watermelon. I've got to run sometime next week. Yeah, you have to share the links. I want to see some of that. All right. Other than corn sugar and yeast, I think you meant corn, comma sugar, comma and yeast. What else should I use in a mash? Ray, that's the $1 million question, brother. You can use anything. I mean, grain wise, a lot of people like to use some barley, get some barley. Sometimes they'll get some of these specialty barleys with the crystal malt or chocolate malt or blonde malt. Some of these different malted barleys that specialized. A lot of times people like rye. If you like a little spice, you can get you some rye. Now don't get rye grass seed. I had somebody call me the other day that they were at, I think, Home Depot or Lowe's or some store, and they found this great deal on some rye, and they were reading it to me. I'm like, no, that's ryegrass, bro. That's different than the rye that you're gonna that you plant in the fields and stuff. So, but yeah, like a rye would be good. Wheat's good. Barley's good. Um, sky's the limit, man. We do malt brandies now, so I mean, you can add fruit to it. I mean, it's just whatever floats your boat. There's no right or wrong answer. Anything that you want, the sky's the limit. So whatever that you think would be, sound good, experiment with it, man. That's how you find some new unique stuff. But or you can even mix other corns. You can try different heirloom corns together. A lot of people are doing that these days. Does anything that you distill ever carry over flavors like very well from your experience? I'm talking just like a regular mashes and washes. Um, it depends on what expectations are. After you've done this a while and you taste a lot of different brandies, a lot of people's, stuff that's just, straight out of the pot, you understand that if you can taste, like I say, if you can taste what fruit that was made of, then that's a success. That's a big success. Um, a lot of times people aren't going to like it because they're going to say, well, I drank this other peach brandy, man, and it was real peachy, you know. And I tried some at there was a big to do at Maggie Valley this year. Somebody brought out some peach, and it was post flavored peach. You know, I'm just gonna say either it was or somebody's found the magic way to do it. You know that produces that kind of sweetness. I mean, it just tasted like it came out of a can. You know, just like the sweetness out of a can and the heavy peach flavor and the syrup. It was just very heavy. And I swore it down. It was straight off the tap, and I don't know. I've never gotten that. But as you use infusers, Michael, you'll get more flavor than you did before. Just using either a thumper that gets watered down really quickly, because my thumpers were usually large. You know, it was like big keg, small keg kind of thing. So um, the thumpers were kind of big, 7.5, 5 gallon, and it's just, that's a lot to infuse with. Most everything I put everything I put in mine was tails until recently and stuff. But yeah, it's we just put tails in there and just to increase the volume. That's what pretty much the thumper is used for. It help raise the proof, and as you put tails in there, you get more alcohol. You get more alcohol at a higher proof. So it's good for to use for that. But a lot of people feel that you have to use a thumper, and no, it's a special tool. Like you wouldn't put up drywall with a nail roofing gun. They're both tools and they're both used for specific things, but sometimes you don't need that. And a lot of people try to force it, and they use it every time regardless of what they do, and that's probably the worst thing they can do. A lot of times flavors will come straight off the steel better than you'll get them out of a thumper, even if you infuse a little bit. If that's why I developed that bypass, is because what I was having happen inside the thumper was all these heads would come in. I was getting smearing, right, and I was tasting heads way into the run, and that I shouldn't be. And it didn't do that when I ran without the thumper, and I'd get 120, 30 proof, no problem, and it wouldn't smear like that. But the second I used the thumper, I got 130, 40, 50 proof. It raised the proof a little bit, but I got the smearing all the way through. So I figured out, I made the bypass where, all the heads and foreshots didn't even go into the thumper. They went straight into the condenser and out. And then when I started tasting hearts coming out of that condenser, I'd shut that bypass down and send everything into the thumper. Now, the thumper would slowly, heat up, and true, there would be a little bit of fours and heads that would come off because of the slow heating. I mean, the steel had already gotten rid of most of what was in the mash in the steel. So it got rid of the higher proportions early on, even though we know that they're carried out all the way through. You generally get a higher proportion coming out early on. Some people have argued there's some science to prove that. I've not seen anything other than just people saying that. So until I see some really good evidence, I'm going to stick with this. But so it would come out, throw out the first little bit, and then boom, it didn't have that smearing, and I was getting my volume again. So fast forward, 30 years, and now I introduced the bypass, and now they're using it on jar rigs and things of that nature, where you can bypass, take your jar off, dump the water, reinfuse, and screw it back on there. Or if you have, copper, infusers or stainless infusers, you can just bypass and it reinfuse, drain, and open it back up, and just keep those hearts, going to that way you don't get a lot of heads and foreshots in, infecting your flavorings, right? And so that's, it helps a lot for that. Or you could just put a drain in it, and I didn't, have welders and all that to do all this shit with. So I didn't have a drain, but you could just put a drain in the bottom of it. And then when you start getting hearts, just drain everything out of the thumper and then cut the drain off and then let it start filling back up again and get all those heads out of there. That way would work as well. But if you're trying to add hearts, tails to it to increase your production, yeah, that doesn't work so well because you're just draining all your tails off and you're not getting the benefit of it. So yeah, the bypass works pretty well. And now I do different things. Now that I'm using sanitary spools and I can use butterfly valves and things like that, I've got it different. Now I just divert. So now I go up into a T. I can open up one valve and just go straight into a condenser and strip, all day. And then I've got a valve on the top of my still that I can open up and I can, strip and rerun. Just dump it right back into the back set and rerun it several times. And that kind of condenses or concentrates your flavors. And I had no idea, but talking to Alan, he's like, that's why they do cognac. So, I guess I'm having my way into the way that they do cognac, but that, it worked. That worked, pretty well for me, concentrating flavors. And then I can shut that valve down, and then I can open up this side and go through my infuser. So if I want to, I can, I can strip over here and just pour it right back into the still and get triple runs real quickly. And I can shut that down and open up this side and divert it this direction where I have another condenser, right, and my inline infuser, and then keep infusing over here and just, take all my fours and heads off on the strip side or strip, whatever I want to do, and then, infuse on the other side. So it's, with these spools and with these ferrules and stuff, it's kind of like, erector sets or Lincoln logs or Legos, you can start experimenting with your setups and come up with some pretty crazy, interesting stuff, which I'm going to do for this watermelon, but I can't show my secret or talk about it until after the competition. So I'll talk about that maybe in a few weeks. All right, another question. Hey, brother, question. Would I expect something unusual if I use quick rising yeast with daddy yeast? I wanted to try and make a yeast that will help the daddy's yeast. Well, now breaking stuff down is enzymes. That's pectic enzymes that break stuff down. So yeast kind of do, but not like an enzyme, pectic enzymes or your amylase enzymes. All those are natural components that cause accelerated rot. Yeast are just things that eat the sugars that are created from that rot. See, you're just breaking down fruit basically, or grain, and you're accelerating the decomposition by adding these enzymes that break it all down quicker than it would normally break down. And this is the part of the natural process that would feed the energy to the plant to get that seed to grow that's inside that fruit, or that get that grain to grow. Gives it the energy to send that that little root out, and then once the colloidal leaves, or whatever they call them, the first little leaves to pop up, once they start gathering light from the sun, then photosynthesis is what gives it the energy. So all the sugar, is not needed as much anymore to drive that energy, right? There's a ATP is created. That's I know a while back, Alfredo was working on his bamboo and stuff, and he was noticing he was getting an exothermic reaction when he broke everything down and added the yeast and stuff. It was heating up, and there was, I explained to him how the exothermic reaction takes place. The energy, the conversion of that sugar into energy, puts off what's called ATP, and that's adenosine triphosphate, and that's energy in the form of energy. I think it's symbolized in chemistry by like a triangle or something. But that's the energy given off, and that's what these cells in our body uses to give us energy to our muscles and stuff. That's it's interesting how all these things kind of work together. Um, so, but yeah, to answer your question, if you're looking for a yeast nutrient, buy a bag of DAP, diammonium phosphate O, 11, 12 bucks for a pound bag. You don't use hardly any. It lasts a long time. So it's kind of like the amylase. It's just another tool you need in your tool belt. You can boil your yeast if you have cheap yeast, though. Like Philby's doing. He's making some yeast food, and he's adding some supplements into it that a lot of the like your Fermax and some of those don't have. So it'll be interesting to see, because it's going to be probably a little bit better for a lot of things than just using like a DAP or a Fermo or something like that, because it's going to have maybe a little um, better rounded supplements and minerals and stuff that they might not have. There's a lot of different nutrients that are beneficial for some fermentations than others. I wasn't aware of this until not too long ago when I started doing some research on it. And there's a lot of places that use different types of nutrients for different types of fermentation. And that was kind of new to me. I thought everybody pretty much used ammonium phosphate or Fermo or something like that. But I found that some people use Fermo for one thing, DAP for another thing, this, that. So there was all kinds of different and I started reading more into it. There's a lot of different nutrients that they were using for different fermentations. Like wine would get a certain one. Certain wines that were more deficient would get certain ones, because there's certain things that had some nitrogen in it, not enough. So um, they didn't want to overdose it. So they were doing an very expensive experimentation with chromatography and gas chromatography and stuff to see exactly how much of each nutrient this had and how much more it needed to make it just right. So they were basically custom tailoring nutrients for each fermentation, based on the amount of nitrogen that it has. Like we feed plants nitrogen, to make them grow, right? And that same nitrogen is pretty explosive, right? There's a lot of energy in that nitrogen, and our bodies use it the same way. So pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, just there's lots of different ways to come up with nutrients. But as far as using them for amylase, no, I would just use a regular amylase for breaking stuff down, and pectic enzymes for breaking your fruits down and things like that. On the fleshy fruits, a lot of fruits people use it, they really don't need it. Like blackberries, you don't really need it. Once you muddle those, in the little berry, you'll see all those little micro berries make you up the berry. But once you break those, you've broken the cell, right? Where like in peach and pears are real fleshy, meaty, bananas that you have to break into all that pectin. Apples, you have to break a lot down to get it all the juices for those. But like for blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, somewhat really don't need it, because once you muddle up those little berries, you pretty much busted the cell. Right, right. Yeah, on mine, I just now I divert. I don't use the bypass anymore. I can do it with 2 valves instead of 3, and I've got 2 condensers, and I can plumb it to where I can have cold water going to both. And so I just divert my. Well, first of all, I just do a stripping run. If I want to do stripping runs, I can do it on one side. I just imagine coming out of your still going into a T and having valves on each side of the T. So I can open up this side if I want to go directly into a condenser and just can strip. I can strip it all day, or I can just strip off the fours and heads and shut it down, and then open the other side and let the hearts go through the other condenser. Or I can go through, an inline infuser. I can go into a thumper or whatever I put on the other side. So that's just diversion. That's not bypassing. That's called a diverter. Also, I could go on a third and do what's called a retort. And that's basically, I can go, well, I do this on my inline infuser. So my infuser goes down and and I can infuse with it. But there's a drain on it, and I drain it directly back into the still. So instead of just draining, all that flavor out of the bottom of that I'm infusing with out of the bottom of the diffuser, when I want to add more, I just add that back into the still, and it's mixing in with the mash that's getting cooked off. So it's adding flavor to that mash as I'm working it. So that's called a retort. So when you add it back, that's retorting. So yeah, the bypass, I did the retorting, and the diversion has been done for ages. And I'd say, truth be told, I'm sure somebody else has done the bypass at one point in time. It was, I made it up out of necessity and just to do. So, I say I invented it, but I'm sure other people have done the same thing years ago. Now, I'm not talking about recently. If they've done it recently, they've seen what I showed 5, 6 years ago to the Moonshine Group, and everybody started building them and all that. But I'm sure 20 or 30 years ago, when I did that bypass, I'm sure other people had the same idea, and I'm sure there's probably some commercial distilleries that had something like that or something similar. So I'm not saying I'm the only one that's ever done it in the whole wide world ever and ever, because they've been distilling for thousands of years. And if you look at some of those setups that they did back in the 1800s, man, they did some pretty sophisticated, setups, with lots and lots of stuff. They really over scienced it and, and simplified it back down. Nowadays, they've simplified it back because they found a lot of that stuff really wasn't needed. But yeah, I just kind of invented it out of necessity, and it's one of those things that once you see how it works, it's like, why didn't I think of that? I'm sure somebody did. Somebody else probably did. So I'm not trying to step on their toes. I started it in the 80s, like 83, I think was when I did mine. What's going on, Mr. Shadow? Awesome, awesome. You're welcome, brother. Yeah, just make just boil some yeast down. Any kind of yeast. It doesn't matter if it's self-rising, activated, or there's several different types of yeast. Just boil it down, kill it, and use it as a nutrient. You can add tomato paste, but do not ever, and I'm gonna say this, ever use tomato paste only for a nutrient. It's not. It's a supplement, so it's not going to give you the nitrogen that you need at all. So if you want to supplement it, there is a lot of good stuff. I used to be dead set against tomato because I read this bird watcher recipe, and it basically used tomato paste for nutrients. And I'm like, well, that's just crazy. So, and I checked it, and no, it doesn't have the nitrogen that you need. And I'm like, why would they do this? And this is stupid. They're not getting the right nitrogen. This is wrong. Don't do it. But really, there was some benefit from the tomato paste going in there. There's certain minerals, calcium, zinc, biotin. There's a lot of nutrients and minerals and stuff in there that definitely helps. But it just didn't have the yan and fan. Yan and fan. You'll hear me talk about that over and over and over again. Learn about it. Yan is a yeast assimilable nitrogen, which means it's a nitrogen that the yeast can eat, kind of like the sugars. You put a trisaccharide or a oligosaccharide or a polysaccharide in front of a yeast, it's going to sit there and try to eat it, and it can't. It can't chew it off there. It can't bite that glucose molecule off there at all. It cannot do it. So, we have to help it. And the way we do that, we break those up and make it so it can eat it. So the same with them using the nitrogen. They have to be able to use that nitrogen and eat it and use it for a nutrient. And so it has to be assimilable. So that means that it can utilize it. So that's the yan. Now the fan is free amino nitrogen, and that's amino acids with NH4, nitrogen, not nitrous oxide, but the nitrogen, and it's actually an ammonium. NH4 is an ammonium, not ammonia. It's an ammonium. Um, it's nitrogen and hydrogen combined. One nitrogen, four hydrogen. So it can utilize that for energy, just like plants utilize it for energy. Just like you can make a bomb with it. It's got so much stored energy in nitrogen. So Um, that's what the bird watcher recipe was. They were getting their nitrogen. Oh, I didn't. But anyway, had you using tomato paste, but they also had you use like a cup of yeast. I mean, a cup for like a 5 gallon fermentation, a cup, and they were like, hundreds of grams, and it's like, man, that's a lot of freaking yeast, man. Then I'm like, oh, now I see. They're putting so much fucking yeast in it that they're cannibalizing each other, and some of the yeast dies off, and they're eating the dead yeast, and that's how it's getting its actual food, right? No, that's just creating stress and off flavors you don't need. But if you do want to use tomato paste, I wouldn't recommend it in a wine or a beer. But if you're going to do a brandy or something where it's going to get lost, or especially like a vodka or something, or if you want to do a taco, like my buddy did, or uh, what were they talking about last night on the show? Somebody did something different. I can't remember. Somebody was talking about something different. But if you use it for something like that tomato, if you had a hint carry forward, it wouldn't, kind of mess it up, then that'd be fine. But yeah, you just don't want to ruin a good brandy with some tomato paste. It can be as simple or complicated as you want it. I try to explain everything in detail and get the science involved, but doing this can be as simple as following simple instructions on a sheet of paper. Just following simple instructions. If you follow the instructions to the T, you will get a good mash. If you follow the conditions, the pH, the temperature, and keep it, all within tolerance, it will. You'll end up with a decent drink. But you can make it as hard, and you can make those instructions difficult to read, and add a lot of unnecessary scientific terms in there, and throw a bunch of formulas in there that means nothing to anybody, and make it seem very difficult. But it's all how you view it. It's not hard. Basically, you just buy the nutrient instead of making it. You can just buy it. That's simple. You don't have to get involved. You know, uh, and just on the front part of the package, the tenth of a teaspoon per gallon. Okay, so that means every 10 gallon I'll use a teaspoon, right? So just follow the instructions and mix it in good, and just read the instructions and follow them. I mean, I'm going to. I keep saying this, it will get done. Actually, I have started on it, but it's getting a lot more in depth and involved. The more I do, the more I want to explain, and it's getting longer than I wanted it to be. But it does explain everything. But it breaks everything down. Everything you need to do: boil, X amount of water to this temperature. Grind your grain. Add your grain to this water at this temperature. Keep 5 gallons to the side to maintain this temperature for 90 minutes. So every once in a while you'll have to stick your thermometer in there, or shoot your little gun in there and check your temperature. Keep it stirred so you can get a temperature of it, not just the surface, right? And every once in a while add some hot water, and then you add this high temp alpha amylase at 185 degrees Fahrenheit, and stir the hell out of it with your drill, with your little mud mixer on there, and you'll watch it thin out a little bit. When it gets down to 150, 55, then you can start adding a beta glucanase, or some of your um, malted grains. If you have them that you want to add, you can do it at 150, 55 range, like your barleys, malted barleys, and whatever. If you want to use some of the beta glucanase from those to help debranch and break up some of the starches. And then as it gets cooled on down, you let it cool naturally on down, and once it gets to about 195, you can add your glucoamylase. Let that work overnight, and next day it should be ready to test and see what kind of conversion you got. You can do an iodine test if you want to. If not, you can stick your hydrometer in there and see what kind of conversion you got, how much sugars you got out of it, and get your reading and get your pH, adjust your pH down a little bit to 5.3 using citric acid, but you don't have to even do that. It just makes it better when you do. But you don't have to do that. You can bypass that. You can bypass a lot of the temperatures. Just use your old finger. Well, it doesn't feel like 180. Yeah, damn, that's hot. It's 180. You can guesswork at it. But the more scientific that you get with it, the more instruments that you use, like a thermometer. I mean, that's to some people that's a big scientific instrument. Fucking thermometer. So some people just want to resist the science just out of resisting science, because it's just like math to me. I hate it and I resist it because I don't understand it. So I understand how people would want to do that. But a thermometer, come on, pH paper, just drop it in there and match the color up. I mean, the caveman can do it. They could probably teach a monkey to do it. So that's not hard science. Just to dip that little piece of paper in there on tweezers and then pull it out and then find what color it matches up closest to. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take Elon Musk's mind to do what we're doing. But if you can keep it in these parameters, though, with temperatures and pHs and things like that, and you'll get it'll be better flavor, because they know that as yeast stress, they start giving off flavors, and they start creating organic acids and stuff, because they're not happy. But sometimes they're creating these organic acids anyway, but sometimes they increase the production of them because they're stressed in a certain way, and it's causing the increased production of it. I guess that somehow helps correct the issues that it's having, maybe. I don't know that much into it. I'm sure there's a reason that it does that. I don't know that they've ever done the test to really find out, why, it's creating more of this when it gets, to this pH, or when it gets to this temperature, or when it gets stressed by other things to this level. Why does it create this butyric acid more so than others? Why does it create this lactic acid more so than other times? But if you can keep it down to reasonable, and you keep your parameters tight, you'll get better flavors, and it'll be a better drink. It's not have to, it's just it will make it better. Will it make it marketably better? That's arguable. Some people will do it simple way and then the science way and taste both and swear there ain't a bit of difference. And I'd have to agree with them a lot of times. But also a lot of times, it will. It does taste better. You don't want to tell them. It's like, you need to work on your cuts, and then maybe we can taste. If it didn't have all those heads in there, I might be able to taste the difference, but I can't. But it's just how deep you want to take it in science. You can take it into great extreme detail, way beyond what I know. I mean, there's a lot of the science that gets really heavy, in the distilling, and it's beyond me. Is it that necessary for those that do it? Absolutely. For me, absolutely not. And for those that don't do the science at all, even less. So you can follow a simple, recipe and not have to deal with any of the science, and you can come out with a pretty decent drink. I did it for years. I mean, I had some science classes and I had some knowledge, but I'm not going to say when I was a kid I was using pH, testing pH, and when I was young testing pH, and no, and I didn't have hydrometers doing all this. No, I'd follow a recipe and did that recipe. It was good. I'd replicate it, and I got good drink out of it. I don't know what my gravity was. Never checked it. Tasted it. Tasted sweet. When it's done, it tasted bitter. So you don't have to do all that. I've done it both ways, so I can see the benefit in one over the other, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to. You can literally follow a simple recipe and a simple how-to, and if you can follow instructions, you can make damn good stuff and not have to know a damn thing about the science of why, what, how, and it's just some people like to know, and some people could care less about all that. I just wanted something to drink. I just want to make some fucking liquor, man. I don't give a shit about all that. So But that's the beauty of it. You know, there's many ways to arrive at that same grit. And I tell you, I'm not saying that the science makes it all better. There's people that have followed the same recipe for 100 years and make the best fucking corn liquor you could put your teeth on. Now, if you ask them to make you a tequila or an apple brandy or something like that, they'd be like, they look at, I don't have a recipe for that, because that's all they've done. They followed the same exact recipe that's been handed down. They've done the same thing over and over. They've got it down to a science, and they don't have to do all these other things because just through replication, they know by taste, by feel, So they're substituting experience for instrumentation, which is fine too. Freezer clean out of all freezers. They just make you a big old mixed brandy, brother. Oh yeah. Well, I understand. Yeah, and once you see it work, it's not as complicated. It's as simple as, oh wow, that's just, yeah. You open this side up and the steam comes up and it goes over and into condenser here. Or you just close that valve and open up the other one and it goes, instead of that way, it just goes this way off the T and through this plumbing. I mean, it looks really impressive, and it looks like a oil refinery with all the pipes and everything going everywhere. And, I've got a lot of different, I got two condensers and a deflegmator. So I got plumbing, lines running everywhere and all these 2-inch spools everywhere and elbows and unions and all this stuff. And it looks pretty wild. But, once you see what everything does, it's pretty much self-explanatory. But we have a lot of people do say the same thing about the whole process of mashing and distilling. That they would say about my still is actually real complicated. But once explained, and you can have somebody explain it in simple terms, and you see it done, and somebody can explain it to you as it's being done and point out what's what. Then it's just like, well, that's common sense. Yeah, I can see exactly what the thought process. So once you see it and it gets explained to you, it's like, well, I can see now, how that would work and how it would be better. It's kind of like the bypass. A lot of people were resistant to that. No, it won't work. I mean, why wouldn't it? I mean, you're sending heads and foreshots directly to the condenser. You're getting rid of those, and then you're putting hearts into your thumper and your infusion, And then some people say, oh, well, you start over with heads and foreshots because it cools off. And it's like, no, once that steel cooks off 50% of the heads, it doesn't create more heads to go into there. 50% of them are gone, period. They don't come back, so no. That, there's a lot of people that argue that, and scientifically they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And it's, I hate being that way, but there's opinions in a lot of this, a lot of opinions. What's the best yeast? What fruit goes best with the others? What goes good with corn? We were asked earlier. Lots and lots of opinions, and and everybody's got opinions, and it's awesome. Everybody tries different things, and that's what fuels so much adversity. And Kimbo, man, Kimbo comes up with some of the most unique fucking combinations to run, and it's like would never thought of that. Try it, brother. He's asked me how this will work, and I'm like, hell, I don't know, man. Try it. But yeah, Kimbo can think outside the box. That one can. But yeah, it's once you see it done, it becomes a lot more self-explanatory. What's going on, brother? No, he sure as hell didn't. But I guarantee you one thing: he out there was his thermometer. So when you put that finger in 100-degree water, it's almost tastes like it's not hot or cold because it's almost your body temperature. So you can put your finger under the tap, and when it doesn't feel cold or it doesn't feel hot, that water's right at 98 to 100 degrees, right? Once it starts feeling slightly warm, 110, starts getting hot at 140, 50, real damn hot. So yeah, once you start using, and that's why I encourage people that do have the instrumentation to check it this way. So when you start out with your gravity reading, for you get initial gravity, check it. Okay, 1080. Okay, that's perfect. Let me take that out, rinse it off. Okay, let me stick my finger down in there and try and taste it. Okay, so that's how 1080 tastes. Now the next time you do it, try sticking your finger in there first and guessing what your starting gravity is going to be, and then check it with your hydrometer, right? That way you're not guessing or just trying to build up a palate to taste these things. You'll know, and you can kind of train your tongue to taste different levels of sweetness, right? So try both. You know, I mean, it's hard to stick your finger and taste something and say, "Oh, that's 5.3 pH." So that's, you're gonna have to rely on the paper or a pen or a gun, one of those. But with your temperature, it's real easy. And feeling the steel, I don't use any thermometers on my steels. The only temperature that I keep track of is my coolant temperature. That's important to keep track of the coolant temperature because I want to keep it pretty constant. But the temperature of everything else doesn't matter to me. I go by the drip and the temperature of my coolant. That's all that's important to me. So, but popcorn didn't. He didn't. He didn't need them. Now, I will say that if you could have taken a hydrometer to popcorn and said, "Look here," and explained how it worked, and told him it was $6 to buy one of those, he would have given you a jar of liquor for it. He said, "I'll take one of those," because it was more exacting, and he would have liked that. I would assume. He would have probably broke it the first week he had it, and then got pissed off and probably never used another one. But it's hard to say. But I think most of the old timers, if weren't quite as um, resistant to the science or technology, I think they're smarter than a lot of people gave them credit for. Um, and I think a lot of them, if they would have been given the opportunity to have, I know I wouldn't, the instruments like the hydrometer, especially the hydrometer. I mean, they would have been in a gold box. Man, that would have been their most prized possession because it really, really helps a lot. Especially when you're trying to come up with a recipe. Now, once you get a recipe, X amount of cracked corn or X amount of corn ground up, you get amylase and using this, and you're getting conversions, and then you're adding 2 pounds of sugar, to bring it up to 1080 from 1060 so you can get more yield. Once you do that 10 times, you don't need a hydrometer anymore because you know approximately what it's going to be if everything converts well and all works out right. So, the same thing with following the recipe. You don't have to have that once you get it dialed in and you know how much sugar. You don't even need it for your own recipes. The hydrometer don't even take it out because basically 2 pounds of sugar for every gallon of water and a little bit of fruit that has hardly any sugar is going to give you 1080 or a little bit more depending on how much sugar is in the fruit itself. And that's where the charts that has how many grams of sugar per 100 grams of like these charts, that tell you for every 100 gram of fruit, you get 18 grams, 14 grams, 9 grams. So this tells you, how much sugar you can expect out of a ripened fruit, right? But a lot of people see some of these down here, like cherries and blueberries and blackberries. They think there's more sugar in those, and strawberries especially was a surprise for me. When the first time I ever did strawberries, I was shocked, and I was damn glad that I had a hydrometer. Um, and actually, I was making wine anyway, so it wasn't going to get distilled. Is when I started making wine, but I would have never guessed that I needed to add as much sugar as I added to that fucking strawberry, because there's just not that much sugar in them. I was amazed. And I was also amazed that when I got done with it, it was pretty dry. I didn't back sweeten it. And it has a really dry, real dry, like a champagne. It's got the fuzzy like champagne. It's a strawberry champagne, but it's like a brut, right? It's real dry, but it has a real good strawberry flavor. It's just not sweet strawberry. So if you're somebody that when you eat a strawberry, you have to dip it in sugar to get that sweetness along with it, you probably won't like it. But if you just like raw strawberry flavor where it's not sweet, man, it's good. And I got there's some gals at the place I'll take them a bottle, and they save me wine bottles for my wine, and I reuse them. I pull the labels off of them. I'll run them through the dishwasher and boil them, and clean them up real good and reuse them, because bottles ain't cheap. Worm tint, good question. Now, are you talking about the distillate that's coming out of the worm, or the water that's circulating around the worm? The water that's circulating around your worm, if you have an adequate flake or container for your worm, should be about 65 to 75 degrees. If you have a Weber steel and you've got the little teeny tiny pot with 3 coils of copper and that's it, it's going to have to be considerably colder. So it will depend on the adequacy of your worm and how much liquid is around it in comparison to your steel size. But if it's the Weber and you're using the one that came with it, it's going to have to be considerably colder than that. So, because it's very inefficient and it's not very much copper to condense, and it will require a much colder temperature to make that condense properly. So it really will depend on what kind you're using that. But if you have a larger steel and you have a plenty large enough worm to handle it, 65 to 75, if you can maintain that temperature in your flake or in your worm box, whatever you want to call it, it's flake stand. That'll be the best. Or circulating around your shotgun condenser, same thing. Or you Liebig, you want that water to be 65, 75. You don't want it to be too hot. It doesn't condense fully, and you might get some steam vapors and some alcohol coming off that you don't even see. You put a mirror up there and see if it fogs it. You might be getting some steam coming out that you couldn't even see. But if it's adequate, you won't. But if it's too cold, some of your oils will start saponifying and they start thickening, and you don't want those oils to do that. It will cause your liquor to get cloudy sooner, and those oils won't esterify as well once they become saponified or they start to coagulate together. Freeze distillation. You saw Phil Billy doing the fat washing and how he cold distilled it out. That when you put it in the cold and it starts coming out of solution, basically what happens is alcohol is a solvent for fats. Okay, so as you add the fat to the alcohol, it disappears, right? But it's still in there. And once you proof that alcohol down to a certain level and it becomes lower proof than what can keep that fat solvent or in solution, it precipitates out and it just comes out, and it'll be the little film of white on the top, or sometimes it'll come in little clots and balls. But that's just balls of fat that's hardening because they become cold and they're no longer able to suspend in the solution anymore. I use both. I don't do I haven't done electric. I do on like a flat stovetop. Now, I will say, if you're going to use a stovetop, you have to find one that doesn't cycle on and off, on and off, on and off to keep a temperature. The one I use is probably 15-year-old glass top. It's not an induction heat. It's kind of infrared, but it stays red. And once I get it to 8, it'll stay red all the way up to 9 into high. It stays red, so it doesn't cycle on and off. But when, like, if I take it to 6, it'll start using the thermostat and it'll come on and off, on and off. You don't want that cycling of heat on and off because that will affect your cuts. And it'll make it much difficult to make cuts once you've got temperatures up and down, up and down, up and down on your boiler. You don't want that. When I do my diversion, it doesn't change the temperature in that boiler. That boiler stays the same temperature regardless of what path that vapor is being sent, right? It has no idea that it's being sent to another place. So it doesn't change temperature and it doesn't increase heads like some people are saying. They don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, but I don't use the electric elements. I use that stove, and you can use a stove as long as it doesn't cycle. We're a gas stove, works fine. You can just regulate the little gas flame. But the elements, I'm going to start using as soon as I can get some ferrules. I need to weld some ferrules in my kegs and get these 4 inches I just bought welded to the top, and so I can clean it out and make it a little bit better. I'm going to weld a drain in my thumper. So I can drain that. But yeah, it's you can get both. You can get the 110 or the 220 amps. Yeah, and what a lot of people are doing is they're using 2. So they're just make sure that you have it on different branch circuits, right? Because you don't want to run 2 to the same branch circuit. It's going to blow that 20 amp fuse or 15 amp fuse. Hopefully you got 20s, and you run on a 20 amp fuse, you get a little bit more out of it. But a lot of people are just running extension cords to one circuit and an extension cord to another room to another circuit and running them that way. So they've got 110 on 2 different circuits. They use them both to heat it up. Once it gets heated and running, they'll shut one off or turn them down a little bit and kind of, even it out some. A lot of people are using 2 or 3 220s, and they can't get that shit hot enough fast enough and run through it quickly and get it done. And I don't think they're seeing much difference. I always concerned about scorching, but everybody that's used them has assured me that it doesn't. I've tried liquor that's made with them and I can't taste it, so I guess it doesn't. I have seen some people that I don't know if they thought they could distill on the grain with them, or maybe they were just putting a lot of solids in with their stuff, or I don't know. But I've seen them pull out the elements, and it just have corroded, covered with, you can see corn kernels and shit scorched to it. And I'm like, what the fuck were they doing? Were they using this to cook their corn to make the mash? Or, I don't know. I've seen some crazy shit, but yeah, supposedly it's everybody that does it loves it. It's a lot cheaper, of course, than propane. And anybody that's run propane knows, it's gonna, for a 20 pound bottle, you're going to get a couple of good runs out of it, and that's it, and that's $30. I don't know what they cost for y'all at. Well, they cost for y'all at for the regular 20. They're like 30 here. So I guess depending on where you go. Right. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, some of them now, the coil top that has like the little coils, now most of those will cycle, but a lot of these glass top ones, they don't. But you're not going to put a keg on there and run it, and you're not going to put a 30-gallon still on there and run it. So you're going to have to adapt, right? I would definitely recommend electric, even though I've never tried it, just based on what I have talked to a lot of people that have used it, and from everything that they've said and done. And they've used, these are seasoned people. It's not greenhorns. That's done both the propane for many years and electric for a few years now. And they're like, there's no way I'd ever go back. It doesn't change a thing. It's faster. It's more convenient. It's easier. I'm running more often now because it's not a pain in the ass. I can be up and dripping faster. I can turn 3 of them on and get all 3 elements going. I can be dripping in 30 minutes and shut 2 of them off and just run one throughout the rest of the run. And it's a lot cheaper, to run the electric. So yeah, I'm gonna eventually, do one, I'll probably get the ability to put me one together, or I'll get on there and maybe watch one of his videos on how to, how to make a SCR or a PID. I know the SCR is what solid state relay, SSR, and most people are using those. So I'll probably go with one of those. 27, yeah, about 30 bucks. Yeah, I think I'm getting mine probably in Kroger or somewhere. They're a little bit more expensive, but yeah, I mean, if you're handy with electric, it's easy. I've done a lot of wiring in my days. I used to work in construction, and I didn't apprentice, but I worked with the electrician. One of the guys. I worked with some builders that were all family, and like the uncle was an electrician. Another uncle was not my uncle, but their family. They had like an old grandpa and his son and his son's brothers, and then some of their kids, right, worked in the construction company to build houses. And one of the uncles was a plumber, one was an electrician, and the other one was good at bricklaying and masonry work and all that, which I didn't do any of. And I think we subbed out the HVAC. So, but I got a chance to do a lot of wiring with him, and it's not bad. Just follow the code and make sure you do it to codes. That way, if an inspector comes in, they're not going to freak out and know that something was wrong, and then they're going to have the whole house inspected and all this. They're going to, the sky's falling kind of thing. They love doing that because it makes people feel like they got their money's worth when they hired them, right? So everybody has to justify being there. But yeah, 5,500, that'll be awesome. I know some people are running like 2 3,500s, and they use one or both to heat it up, and then cut one off and just use the other one to maintain throughout the rest of the run, and that works pretty well. I've seen people use them with smaller, and it will depend on your steel size, of course. So if you're under 20 gallons, I'd say a couple of the 110s would probably be fine, or one of the 220s will be fine. If you're running a 30, 40, 50, I definitely would recommend getting 220 and having a couple of 3,500s or a couple of fives or something like that. But yeah, with the 20, yeah, you'll be fine. So you're just going to run the one element on the 20. That's at 5,000, because I mean you can control it. I mean you can turn the heat down. So I like that about it. The PIDs, I did like the sound of those because they kind of do cycle to maintain the heat, whereas the SCR just sends a constant voltage, and what it is what it is. It doesn't care what temperature. It's getting this amount of electricity, and this is what this element burns when it gets this amount of electricity. And you cut it back, it'll cut back, but it doesn't cycle and have thermostatically controlled all this stuff. So I got a lot to learn though. So I might have been wrong about the thermostatically controlled thing on the SCR versus the PID, but just from hearing somebody else talk, that's what I gathered from it. The PID kind of cuts on and off. The SCR is constant, but I'm learning about it. But that's another good thing about Phil Billy. He'll make a video and show you how to put one together, and then he'll do another video showing you this is what I've got for sale. If you don't want to build it yourself, follow my how-to videos, and I'll put it together for you for a fee, and ship it out to you. You can drop by and pick it up, or drop by a festival and grab it. And yeah, that's what I found with the SCR versus the PID is that one cycles, and kind of cycles temperature on and off, cuts on and off, versus just straight regardless. And you could probably burn out an element easier on a SCR versus a PID because of that. But as long as you maintain, the numbers, don't overdo it, don't send too much, voltage or amperage to it, you should be all right. But they're pretty basic. Just getting a box, mounting it in the box, and making sure that you have plenty of room. It doesn't get hot. So I know some people are adding fans. They're getting these computer fans and adding to their boxes. To help if it makes them feel better. But using the right size wire, the right gauge wire, you need to know what size. If you're using aluminum, you need to use your oxide, and so it doesn't, break down on you and cause some fire issues. You gotta use that. What they call that? It's a grease, and it's electrolytic grease, and it doesn't. Um, it will allow the electricity to flow through it, and you just coat that aluminum with it. I think Alumilux or something like that's what it's called. It's been a long time since I've done it. But if you're using aluminum, just make sure that you do that to keep the oxidation down on your aluminum. That way it doesn't corrode. Or if you're using copper, you don't have to worry about it. You can use smaller copper to get the same amperage as the aluminum. Requires a bigger wire, bigger gauge. On your 6th gen, I'm telling you, if you do the replacement, it will. It will get better. It gets so good, and just. But if you get to the point where you think you're adding too much, you can always cut back a little bit. It doesn't have to be the 10 or 15, but as long as it's just getting better, keep it up. That's the way I've always done it, and you can do it perpetually, forever and ever and ever. Amen. But if you just keep adding sugar and water to the existing grain with a little bit of backset, you're just basically getting soured sugar water, and you're not getting really any of that grain flavor anymore. So it washes out. Some people kind of like it okay that way. I don't know. It's just a sour sugar wash. If I guess you call it sour sugar wash at that point, because that grain, after you use it so much, it loses efficacy. So if you replace corn and sugar, you don't have to do all the corn. Just a certain percentage, 10% each time, and just keep doing it that way, and you'll get into a groove. It'll get a little bit better, a little bit bad, and then all of a sudden it'll just flatline. It'll just be the same every time, man. And if you get it down to where you add and take, it'll work out well. No, man, the best viewers are right here, right now, man. Yeah, we're not all about those, man. We're just about spreading the word. I'm not here to try to set the world on fire and make a $23 check from Twitch for having 100 people on every night. I'm not. I don't care about that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you helping other people, though, because it does. It helps some streamers. But don't click on that link. We don't know what it is. But yeah, it does help. Some streamers, are all about, they stream for money. That's their occupation. They get on there and they'll stream the games they play, or some girls will shake their booty and, and for tips and stuff, and some people will read books online. I mean, this is everything. Text, you put his race car videos on there, and I mean, everybody just put different things. But some people do it for a living, so those people need viewers and need to increase their viewership, and it's hard for them sometimes to get the word out. So some of these people that do that for others, a lot of times they're just selling them a fake list. I saw a news thing not too long ago that had a huge wall with cell phones. Now this was crazy, but each phone was tethered. It was plugged into. Each phone was plugged into to keep it charged and to get information. They do that all at the same time. And each of these phones had, I guess, a dozen people on it each, and there was just a big bank of them, and there was thousands of people, and they could log on to somebody's stream with all these phones, and it would look like 1,000 people were viewing the stream, right? And these people get paid on their viewers. So a lot of these stream companies, they're thinking, wow, we're getting our our stream out to all these people. They get to see this little commercial we post up there every once in a while, or on StreamYard they get to see the little duck with S over here, and so we're getting a little bit of advertising in, and they'll pay you because you're advertising for them. If you get a lot of people, I've never gotten the first penny from any of this. I don't think Philbilly or any of us have. I don't know. I think there might be some people that get $3 checks a month or something like that for monetization, but I've never gone that route. Never asked for the first penny. They don't even have a place to send a check if they wanted to. But I guess it helps some people. But yeah, some of that's fake. You see some people, you can always tell it too, because they'll have like 300 viewers or 3,000 viewers. And there's only like 4 people in chat talking. It's like, and it's not like this. A lot of people in this, they sit and watch and they don't chat because they want to be anonymous. They want to learn how to do this, but they don't want to ask the direct question because they don't want their name in over here and being seen, right? So they just wait for other people to ask questions. And if that's the case, I will encourage you, create a fake account, put a fake name on it, use a brand new email address, don't associate it with you, don't friend it, whatever. But create a fake account and then come in and ask your questions if that's the case. Or find me on Facebook and send me a private message. I deal probably with more questions every day, all day, and I'm not going to discourage it because I love every last one of you that do message me all hour of the day and night. Even if it wakes me up at 10 in the morning when I sleep, I'll try to answer, and help. But if I don't, instantly, I'm either asleep or away from my phone, or I've passed out with the little earbud plugged in and it doesn't ring or make a noise when the earbuds are plugged in. So you got a wine channel. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, I love wine and making wine. And I actually got some messages before I went on the podcast, but in one of my friends, Frank, I'm not going to mention his last name. There are a lot of Frank friends. Well, I'm not gonna, I'll never call anybody out like that unless, of course, they're in chat. Then I'll use their name from chat. But yeah, he'd never done wine before. He'd done brandies, but never, done a wine just for wine, for wine's sake. So we've talked a little bit about wine and been hitting around doing another, show on wine. And maybe, I can bring you on and we can kind of usually I do the one man pony thing, and there's a reason behind it, is because a lot of times when you get 2 or 3 people on here, it becomes a competition who can talk, and everybody interrupts each other, and then egos start colliding and become issues, and it just gets weird, and I just want to educate, I just want to teach, and I don't want to deal with egos. I don't want to deal with drama. I don't want to deal with, and I'm not pointing at anybody that I've done it with in the past. I'm not talking about them at all. I just, and they know that when I talked to them and agreed to do podcasts with them in the past, I told them both, this is really what I wanted to do all along, and now I'm doing. So I'm here, and not because of something that you all did wrong or anything like that. It was just working up to me getting to the time and in a position where I'm not working anymore because my old job really wouldn't like me doing what I'm doing. But I'm retired now, so I don't give a fuck. I'll still do a little private work, and that's But yeah, so I had to wait until I was done doing that, or I'd lost my license. So now I'm not licensed anymore. I don't give a fuck. So I can do what I want and say what I want without having to be under somebody's thumb. But that's the reason I did that. And so it's not about all that. It's just that, but every once in a while, I like having somebody on to interview. I've had Big Easy, I've had Al Bishop on. Um, and if you want to, I'll bring you on, and we can talk about winemaking. Because I love making wine. Been doing wines for probably around a decade now, around 10 years now, and really when I first started doing it, I just threw everything into it. Like I'm obsessive compulsive, so I have to read and learn and immerse myself in everything. And I did that for years and years before I even started getting online with the moonshine thing. Um, but really, really enjoy making wines and did it because my fiance, moved in and she likes wine or liked wine before we found out she had diabetes and she doesn't drink the wine anymore. She likes sweet wine and she can't drink the sweet wine. I make a really good sweet heat, a white wine that's sweet and naturally sweet. I stop fermentation before it's finished and use the natural sweetness from the fruit, then to add the sugar post, like I was talking about earlier at the beginning. But yeah, I do too. And I've had to learn. As I get older, I have to relearn a lot of things. I've forgotten a lot of stuff that I've learned over the years. In chemistry class and biology class, and B, educating myself as well. Um, when I first went to college, I was going to go pre-med, and I had a lot of science and biologies and stuff, and I had, what they call them, in high school, the pre-med, what were they called? Anyway, it was classes that you took before you went to college, so they were college prep course. So I took chemistry, college prep chemistry and physics and biology and stuff, and it was a little more advanced and harder than just the standard chemistry that wasn't college preparatory. But I took all those and that, and I always angled it because I distilled as a child. I mean, I started moonshining when I was a kid, growing wheat and making moonshine when I was 13 years old, and riding around on my motorcycle with grains and shit laying across a gas tank and backpacks. And, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And using wood in the woods and using, stream water. Um, yeah, it was different. And using a pressure cooker. So yeah, it was a lot different then. And yeah, I fucked a lot of my first 6, 7, 8 mashings were all scorched and burnt and way overdone. But I learned as time went and learned the hard way. And I wouldn't trade that. But as I took science, I'd angle that, and see how that applied to, moonshining, distilling, and biology, learn about, like I was talking about earlier, the ATP, the energy given off in the reactions and how that's caused and, how it creates heat and exothermic reactions and all these things. I dug it, man. I love science till it came to math. And that was that was the end of my pre-med careers when I hit uh, trigonometry and yeah, like kind of not algebra. I did pretty good with, but when it came to trig and calculus, that's when I kind of the calculus didn't calculate for me. So that's when I decided to go a different route. But I do love, learning about stuff and what makes it all tick. I've been that way since I was a kid. You know, I'd, I'd take radios apart, phones apart, just see how they worked. And I tore up more shit at home, and my dad gets so damn mad at me for taking shit apart. There was like TVs and phones. And finally, he just started bringing me stuff home that was broke. See if you can fix this, and kept me kept me uh, focused on that instead of the stuff that worked. But yeah, cool. No, but send me a link, bro. Send me a link or share it in here, man. A lot of people can go to your channel and check it out. We get quite a few people that'll watch it later on. So yeah, you know, if it's something on the topic, I don't care sharing it. People are like, why are you bringing these other streamers in? Like Ian and stuff. I'm supporting my brothers, man. I'm not in competition with anybody. I don't see this as a competition. I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to educate and make it safe. Well, maybe that's two reasons. But to educate people on how to do it and how to keep it safe and stay safe and answer their questions. Because I know when I first started, I was probably young and dumb where I didn't think about what other chemicals I could be having and what I was doing and danger. I had no fear at all. I was just blind dumb. That's for my science classes. But as I started learning, I realized that, I drank a lot of heads as a kid. That explains a lot of those hangovers, right? Ginseng and liquor. Well, I tell you what, ginseng is so expensive. It would be best sold and use that money to buy you many 50-pound bags of corn, right? But yeah, ginseng does have starches, and it would take a lot. It would probably be one of the most expensive. It'd be like making a mash out of saffron, right? It's just yeah, it would it'd be like really expensive. But yeah, there's starches in ginseng roots, and a lot of roots have a lot of starches in it. And now I'm Googling. Okay, for those that say I Google everything, here I go. I'm about to Google for the first time tonight. That really pisses me off. In case you can't tell, they say, "Oh, I sure Google every question, because I don't know nothing. I just Google everything." But I don't know how much starch is in ginseng, so I'm going to Google that. Okay. Starches are major carbohydrate components of ginseng, making up a significant portion of its dry weight. I thought so. So yeah, you could use your amylase on it just like you would any other starch. Just use your alpha, get it up to 185. Use your high temp alpha, let it cool. 150 if you want to do a barley and ginseng or rye and ginseng, wheat and ginseng with some malts. You could add them at about 155. If not, you can let it get down to 100, 195 to 100 and add your glucose. Let it sit overnight and then, do a gravity reading and see how much conversion. These starches are largely insoluble in water and alcohol. Remaining after the extraction of more bioactive soluble substances like ginsenosides. That sounds deadly. Ginsenosides. That sounds like genocide, but it's ginsenosides. That's interesting. The physiochemical properties of ginseng starch, such that its structure and thermal behavior, are important to the quality of ginseng. So, it's not water soluble like our polysaccharides. It's insoluble in water and alcohol, making it a sediment that needs separation during extraction. So let's see what type of enzyme. Googling that because I don't know shit about ginseng starches. And anybody that does, more power to them. I want to meet them because they're a one in a million. But I'm sure there's people in China and Japan that can tell you all about them because they're crazy with it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you can use regular amylases like we do. So yeah, it'll break them down. So yeah, use your alpha, your glucopullonases, and cellulases and pectinases all. So you could use a little pectic enzymes as well. That's very interesting. Again, this break is kind of, maybe this is why people think I Google everything, because I've done a lot of research and I've learned a lot. And when I explain things in how it was learned. So ginseng starch is often embedded within the plant's cell walls. Using cellulase and pectinase helps break down the cellular wall structure. And you hear me say that all the time, which improves the accessibility of the starch for amylases to act upon them. So you hear me all the time talking about how it's breaking down these cell walls. So anytime you hear somebody saying that, they've either heard me say it or they've read it off Google, and maybe that's why they think I Google everything, because I talk like Google. But what are you gonna do? No, I don't know anything about ginseng starches, but I'm gonna Google it and learn. I don't expect. I guess they expect somebody to do a show like this and be able to answer every question without Google. I don't know anybody, even Patrick Heiss probably couldn't tell you about the starches in ginseng, and that dude's brilliant, probably the most knowledgeable person in the industry. So I don't know. People are just haters, and I don't want to be a hater of haters, but I gotta. That makes me a hypocrite, I guess. Brother, we can start the wine series with your next question. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come, but I have done one that's beginning to end, and I'm going to do more beginning to ends. I don't like doing them because it seems like every time I do a beginning to end video, everybody and their mama has a question to ask, and then like tonight, I get some good questions, great questions, but not boom 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 where I'm 30 minutes behind like usual. I'm not. I don't know. So it's either a wave or nothing, and it's tonight it's a little bit slow, so it's been a really good night to do a beginning to end. But I don't know, maybe I guess when I'm doing beginning to ends, I'm talking about things and people asking questions to clarify a lot of what I'm talking about. So let's plan on doing a beginning to end wine, and I'll talk to Mash Brothers and see if he wants to jump on here with me, and we can both talk about how we each do our wines. Maybe we can pull out a few recipes and stuff. I've been threatening to do that for a while now. But on my recipes, I try to write down, like I just did with the watermelon. One of those round watermelons, a good sized round watermelon, a little bit bigger than a basketball. One of those. It's, I guess, that big, quite a bit bigger than a basketball, but that's about a gallon of juice once you get all the pulp and everything out. And I didn't use pectic enzymes on watermelon. Don't do that. Just get the pulp out. And then the large, oblong ones, it's about a gallon and a quarter to half, maybe a gallon and a third. So I try to do that, with apples. It takes about 22 pounds of apples to get a gallon of apple juice for me, the way I do. Some people, different apples are going to be different juice levels. So, but different wines, and acidity. Some people do it different ways. Now for bourbon or for brandies and stuff, you're not going to take your acid levels as low as you will for a wine. You're not going to use the same yeast probably as you would for a wine. The temperatures that you're keeping or you want to keep it at is going to be much lower than what you would for a grain or something, or a brandy that you just want to do immediately. So things are quite a bit different, about the wines. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm like, God damn, man, we're talking about $1 million mash here. Because it would take a lot of ginseng, to mash up and to convert to starch and get it. It'd be very expensive. You know how much ginseng sells for. I mean, I got relatives and shit that go singing all the time. I grew up in Pike County, singing cattle of the freaking world, and West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, Virginia, all that area, man, it's a lot of ginseng. And I got cousins that ginseng. Actually, my ancestors used to own a dry goods store that sold the shit out of ginseng to China. And actually, during the war, they about went bankrupt because a Japanese submarine sunk a ship, and they didn't get reparations for that either from the government. They should have, and they never filed. But they about went bankrupt, man, because they would collect all this ginseng, and it was during the Depression, 30s and 40s, and in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia and West Virginia and West Virginia, It was, middle of Appalachian. It was economically, it was tough time. People were living on, they were foraging for food, and hunting for food and stuff. It was tough times. And my family had a dry goods business, and they kept a lot of people alive. People were going out singing, and they would come in and bring their sing, and they'd exchange it for beans and food and other dry goods that they were getting in on the paddle boats, right? And they were trading for it, and they amassed a big, 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 huge bunch of ginseng, right? They dried it and had it hanging in years worth. And so they eventually got enough that they were going to ship it. And they put it all on a big ship. I guess they boated it to, the coast, and they put it on a big ship, and it was headed to China. And fucking Japs sunk that motherfucker, man. And they lost everything. It wasn't insured, and lost, the equivalents probably of everything, just about bankrupted them. But, they pulled it out, worked their ass off. But yeah, as a tincture, yeah, I would say it would be fine. Um, but again, it said that it wasn't really alcohol soluble. We were talking, so it will require some sort of enzyme to break it down to where you might get to the benefit of the components in the ginseng that are beneficial to the body or stuff. But I would say do some research on how some of the Chinese and Japanese and the Asian cultures utilize this ginseng and how they made their tinctures, and I'm sure there's certain ways that they may have mixed it, because they're really intelligent about the uses of enzymes, right? They're the ones that came up with this Gobi yeast and enzymes within the yeast that do all the conversion, like the yellow label that comes from Asia. So they've done a lot of research in enzymes and yeast and stuff, so they're very knowledgeable. So spend a little time on Google. Don't be embarrassed if you have to Google something, because I'm sure somebody will have to say something about it if you use Google to learn something. Heaven forbid. But yeah, check it out, because I'm sure that they made some really good tinctures, because it is a good medicine. And that's one thing I want to learn more about. And Lisa, I've been trying to get her and Mark to do. I think they do a Monday podcast, and I think they touch on some tinctures and stuff. Mark Morgan uh, and Uncle Moonshine and Lisa Day. For those, I'm sure everybody knows them. If you don't, you should. What's going on, Scott? It's ferment to the right now, man. Where the hell you been? You're tardy. But yeah, I would say there's probably some really good stuff, and there's a lot of different stuff that you can make tinctures with. A lot of people make the alcohol just to make tinctures, and they want to get that real high proof. So it will break down a lot of these components and then proof it down. Of course, when you take it, maybe I don't know, some of them maybe you don't. But I'd like to learn more about tinctures and homeopathy remedies, and probably homeopathy remedies and stuff like that, because it's a lost art. And who knows, man? Times are getting crazy out there, man. I mean, things are getting polarized. People are hating on everybody. They hating on you if you use Google. They're hating on. There's a lot of hate out there, and I guess I'm getting the reputation of being bitter, because I call people out on shit. When people say or do something, I just don't let them doormat me. I call the shit out. So I guess that makes me a bitter person, because I don't have a low tolerance for bullshit. But, if somebody calls me out on something, I'll say something, and everybody thinks I'm bitter. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. Just don't get me started. Don't fuck with me. I'm fine. But yeah, you poke the bear, you're going to get the claw, expect it. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff, though, that a lot of home remedies and foods. We talked a little about that last week, and that's one thing, the DIY Shine and Stuff page, I want to kind of add a little bit of this stuff to that page, so if you're on there, and I may change DIY shine and, you know, off-grid living or survival, you know, DIY shine and survival techniques or tactics or something, you know, and and get more into canning, you know, canning foods and canning goods and pressure canning, and maybe converting, you know, I can teach you how to convert your Weber steels into, you know, a pressure canner, but you got to have your vent on there. You can't just fucking let the pressure build up without a gauge and a vent. But you can buy those gauges and vents and rig them up to work on there just fine. Hello, Miss Tammy. How's things going over in Garrett County? Of course, Lancaster could be Pennsylvania where all them Amish Lancasters are. Yeah, I know right where Lancaster is. I've been through there and done a lot of work there many times. Not far from me at all. Yeah, they do. People need to chill the fuck out, man. They let the media and all this shit wind them up and feed them so much shit. They should feel like a mushroom. No, that's right. Yeah, you don't want to. You gotta have one of those little relief valves on there that lets your pressure off, and they're not very expensive. I think they're like $19, and I think it's a half-inch or 3/8 inch thread. I can't remember what it was now, but you get a little tap, just drill out. You get an end cap for your ferrule, right? These ferrules, and if you have the football steel, you have a 2.5, and you can get a 2.5 inch cap, or you get a 2 cap and then a reducer to a 2, which is what I did. And you can drill it out, tap it, and just screw this pressure gauge in, and on the side you can um, put in your little, it spins, right? And it kicks out the steam as it spins, and 5, 10, or 15. So it's weighted, and just like the old pressure cookers. And you can make a little pressure cooker canner out of your beverage. So, you know, you can get more uses out of it. And when you, for Christmas, you can show your wife what a nice little big 18.5 gallon pressure canner you got her, you know. Just don't tell her what you're using it for while she's gone. Right? But guess what I found out we can do with the pressure canner? We can make a moonshine still out of it. Can you believe it? Oh, it's awesome. Let's make tinctures, right? So yeah. So you can buy that Weber football steel, just tie the football in that canister and just put your little pressure gauge on there and your little weighted, you know, steam, whatever. What do they call it? Is that something I'm gonna have to do? Oh my god! But it's a pressure relief valve, but it's weighted. You know, it just does it by weight. And it's got like a 5, 10, 15 on it. I've got it in there. I'd have to dig around for it. But yeah, it wasn't maybe 20, 25 bucks for those two parts, and tap them, drill them, put them on there, and got you a pressure canner cooker and a big one. You know, hell, you do a lot in that. And it's got the false bottom, you know, in there, so you can put that in and set all your jars up off the bottom so they don't get too hot. Nice. What's going on, James? What's up, brother? Welcome to the show. Hey, we're all learning, brother. But I will. Let me look real quick and see what. Maybe I can give you a link. Homemade organic ginseng tincture and extract recipe. So, if you type in Google, how do Asians make tinctures from ginseng? Surprisingly, gives you a pretty good amount of information. AI, I was talking about it earlier. It can be the enemy or you can be great. I love it because I can get in depth questions and I can get scientific with it, and it'll get just more scientific than I want it to. You know, I like that about it. But just pulling this up, They're talking about ingredients: fresh ginseng, rice liquor, soju, which is Korean vodka, well, with rice, or Korean moonshine, um, made with rice. And they might make it with other things, but I do know that the rice wine is sake and rice moonshine is soju. But yeah, they just clean the roots, wash them, prepare the jar, clean ginseng roots into a sterilized glass jar. Everything has to be sterile when you do this stuff. So plan on boiling a lot. Boiling a lot of stuff. Boiling, just like canning, Um, so place the whole clean ginseng roots into a sterilized jar. Add the liquor. Um, it has to cover, and this is the same with this. And anytime you do meats or anything like that, you want the liquid to cover what's in there. So put enough liquor in there to cover the roots. Steep, let it sit and steep in a cool, dark place for a minimum of 3 to 6 months. And some prefer it to age longer. Yes, I'm reading this from Google for those that just tuned in, because I don't know everything, contrary to popular belief. But steep them, and then once it's done, just store it in a regular jar or bottle that's sealable, and then use it. Now, dosage. One thing is, it's depending on how much root you use. The more root, the more concentrated it's going to be. So you might want to start out with low doses and increase. That way you don't get too much. You might be able to use it in some teas. Use some ginseng tea. I know a lot of people do the teas back home. And maybe put a little bit of that liquor in your tea, your ginseng tea. But yeah, that's what they're doing now. Here at Culinary Solvent has a homemade organic ginseng tincture and extract recipe. If you Google how do Asians make tinctures from ginseng, it will pull all this information up. And one of the first links you'll see some YouTube videos on it, and you'll see one that says homemade organic ginseng tinctures and extract recipe. So it'll give you, and it says 200 proof food grade ethanol. You're not going to get that, so don't go out looking for it, because if you find it's going to be expensive as fuck and you don't need it, that's stupid. I hate when they do that stuff, because you have to pay a lot of money to get that. And pure grain or moonshine 180 90 proof is just as damn good. But it has a little bit of water in it, where this probably doesn't. But we're making tinctures. We're not, this isn't brain science or something where somebody's life's on the line. Or we're not making a medicine where it has to be exacting. So that's 200 proof. As soon as alcohol, I don't know if a lot of people don't know it, but as soon as you can do 200 proof, but it has to be done in a vacuum, or you have to use what's called a molecular sieve, in which lets all the water fall through, but not the alcohol. So, or vice versa, it lets all the alcohol through, but it traps the water, because water molecules are bigger. I had that wrong once before, and I said that, and I'm like, I want to make sure, right? Water molecules are larger than ethanol, so the ethanol goes through and it traps the water, won't let the water through. And it's called a molecular sieve. And but doing that, once you have to do it, of course, in a vacuum. Once alcohol touches air, it sucks water out of the air, moisture out of the air, because it's a hygro, HYGRO, not D, but G, hygroscopic, and not hydro. You'd think hydro because of liquid in water, but it's hygroscopic, and it's a desiccant. It basically sucks moisture out of the air. And no, this come from fucking Google. Now I didn't know all this shit. I'm not pretending to know all that about the tinctures and ginseng starches. So yeah, yeah, I don't know much at all about those, but I like learning about it, and I just did. So next time somebody asks me, I'll be able to say, Not going to be able to break them down very easily, but you can use amylase on them, and you can use pectic enzymes to help break down those cell walls and to get some of those goodies out. And yeah, then use your alpha and your glucoamylase, and you can use some pulinase to break down those cell walls as well. But we just learned something. So I didn't read that off. But I learned it. See, now it's up here. And I'm sure I'll forget it in about 6 months. I'm getting old. So I'm having to relearn a lot of stuff, that I once knew, and I'm sure I'll have to relearn that again sometime. Probably sooner than later, the way I'm getting, man. I'm getting forgetful. The other night, text making fun of me, laughing. I couldn't think of a slobber box and slobber pot for the life of me. And a couple months ago, it was funnel, a fucking funnel. I couldn't think of funnel. Yeah, I'm a professor. Yeah, I do consider this teaching. I see it as, I call it a class a lot of times. This is my class. I'm teaching. And I want to, and I've got teachers' aides like Scott and Clint to help me. Clint's not persona non grata tonight. I don't know what happened to him. I swear to God, he's got nothing better to do on a Saturday night than be here. But yeah, I hope he's out having fun. Yeah, I enjoy it, and if I don't know an answer, I'm gonna find you an answer, And if I can't, I'll get in touch with Patrick fucking. If I have to, I'll get in touch with Patrick Wade if I have to. That dude's probably the most knowledgeable person there is. Runs Firm Solutions, Or I'll talk to Alan Bishop, or I'll find an answer if I can't Google it and get it. I'll answer what I can straight up, right? And which is probably 90% of the questions I can answer without anything at all. But every once in a while, somebody will ask me about some wild yeast that I've never heard of and throw out some scientific name. And I don't know what that fucking is. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't know what that is, So I Google it. And you can tell when I'm typing, and misspelling. It's Patrick Heist. I couldn't think of his last name. That's what I was Googling. I keep calling Patrick. Yeah, Patrick Heist. Not Weist. Why was I thinking W-E-I-S-T? It's H-E-I-S-T. Patrick Heist. He's a fucking genius. He's got the fermentation doctor at Whiskey University. Yeah. Now that's the teacher right there. He can answer about any question you want at any level you want it answered. Probably most knowledgeable individual on fermentation, the science of it, and I mean they've got a lab that they do genetic sequencing for to find out what bacteria and stuff are affecting certain mashes for big people in the wine industry, beer industry, whiskey industry, vodka, whatever, all over the world. They come to him for answers. So he's probably, if not the number one authority in the world, probably easily top 5, for sure. So yeah, and he's a guy that he's been on a podcast or two. He's talked with Alan Bishop, and I think Ian and them had him on. So hard finding someone. I mean, this dude's a multi-millionaire. He's got the Wilderness Trail Distillery, one of the top 10 bourbon distilleries in the world. Runs Firm Solutions, does all that, but does have time to. I mean, he's not going to have time to answer our questions. If every one of us were to call him up and ask questions, I'm sure he's going to probably ignore us. But he does have time to do some podcasts and talk to people and get the word out and take the time to do that, which is a lot in this industry. That's huge for somebody of his caliber and knowledge, and probably very, very busy individual. Yeah, yeah, he's the man. Yeah. So if people ask you questions, I'll say more than 9 out of 10. It's probably going to be 95 out of 100 questions I can answer for you. There's always going to be that one. I don't know. Like the starches in ginseng. I know that it's a starchy root vegetable. I know that you could do it. How much? I had no idea how much starch, content there was, and I knew it was a high starch, but exactly how much and will regular amylase work on it? I don't know. We're going to find out. We did. So it's that easy. What's it like distilling in South Carolina? I would say do it very quiet. And the pickle jar still isn't mine. That's Philbilly's. I'm Bad Santa. I just do videos and podcasts on Philbilly's channels because it's all part of the Philbilly.com network and brotherhood. We're all part of the Moonshine Militia together, and he lets me podcast to his channels because he wants his people to learn from me and get exposure to this and watch his videos and get some answers. A lot of times I'll refer to a lot of his videos for answers and stuff. But the pickle jar was just an experiment. People said it couldn't be done, and it was basically something that was just done to prove that it could be done, but it's not something that you're going to want to use, right? You're going to, be safe. Don't use the pickle jar still, and don't do all that. Basically, you heat up any alcohol water combination in a vessel. It heats up to the point where it vaporizes. It'll send the vapor, it builds up pressure, and it sends the vapor out the pipe. And that goes into a condenser, and it gets condensed, and it condenses the alcohol, right? Because that's what boils off predominantly first. But don't do that. There's lots of, air stills out there. There's lots of cheap bevers. You can buy one used, cheap as dirt. It was done just as you said it couldn't be done. Here's the way it's done. If you're in jail and you can't make hooch and you got a pickle jar, what are you gonna do? All right, maybe then. But he did it just because people said it couldn't be done, and he did it just to prove that it could be done. This isn't one of those try this at home kind of things at all, and it was never intended as that. In fact, he worried to death that somebody's going to get hurt doing that silly shit, and he did it all as kind of a dare, and somebody said you can't do it, and he wanted to prove that you could, and he did. That doesn't mean that you should. Um, if you had to in the zombie apocalypse and you needed some alcohol to clean up and scrub with or do it, clean wounds with or drink or whatever, and you can't find a pot, sure, risk it, do it with a jar. I'm not going to tell you can't, but we're going to say that you shouldn't and don't do it. And if you do and you get hurt, don't come suing us because we told you don't do this at all. But yeah, it was cool. It was funny, but it's kind of like the jar rigs. If you do them safely, it's okay. But the second that jar breaks with all that alcohol and steamed alcohol and vaporized alcohol, it's gonna start a fire. And hopefully you're not in your kitchen when it happens, right? So yeah, don't do that. But yeah, there's a lot of cheap little beverage deals that you can get out there, $100, and get into the hobby cheap. If you can find one of those little football steels, let me see. I got a picture I can show you. Yeah, so if you can find one of these, they call it football steel because of the head right there shaped like a football. And there's another one that's similar to this, but it looks like a milkshake blender, kind of blender on top. And they call that the milkshake head. I don't think those work as well as this. But yeah, these work real well. You can pick them up now. They have a lid that kind of comes up. It doesn't just dump right here. It's more of a, and used to they had drains. They don't have them anymore. But if you can see one of these on And a lot of times you'll see them on Facebook Marketplace used. Somebody bought one and they didn't list the bad Santa and they didn't make good liquor and they got pissed off and now they're selling it. You know, buy it, listen to me, and you can benefit. I'm just kidding about all that, but you know, that's one thing though. We do want people to enjoy the hobby, and if we can teach them how to do things the right way or a better way, not necessarily the right wrong, but a better way instead of the average or okay or not so good way. There's a lot of ways to do it, and a jar is one of them, I guess. You know, and it's not going to turn out good liquor, but it can be done. But yeah, in South Carolina, be real careful. They different states have different laws, and there's federal laws against distilling at home nationwide. But they have the same thing with marijuana. But they allow states to dictate if marijuana is going to be allowed, and it's still illegal federally, but you can buy it recreationally in some states. We know that, right? And it's the same way with distilling alcohol, federally illegal, but a lot of states have laws that permit it. A lot of different variations, and not, I shouldn't say a lot of states, some states will permit it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody on the internet's word for it. Go directly to your state.gov and find your answers there, or consult an attorney. Don't listen to some Jake Leg on Facebook saying, yeah, it's perfectly legal to do it in your state. You can do 1,000 gallons, son. Don't listen to it. Just look it up on the .gov or consult with an attorney, because you don't want to be sitting in court saying, but old Joe Schmo on Facebook said it was okay and legal. That's not going to be much of a defense. You know, they're going to laugh, and then they're going to be like, well, Joe Schmo lied to you, son, and you have to do 6 months, you know, or pay $5,000 or both, or you never know. So, but South Carolina is very strict. They're one of the stricter states on it. We've had some members gotten in trouble there this year. You put it out there, and they're going to do it. They have ALE, Alcohol Law Enforcement. That's all they do. They have nothing else to do but alcohol law enforcement, and they're bored, right? Because they don't just want to go to these legal distilleries and make sure they're all on the up and up, because they all are. Everything's documented. They have to do it for federal and everything, so it's boring. So they want to catch a bunch of moonshiners. So they get on TikTok, Facebook, and I'm sure there's probably some watching me or one of those viewers that watched in the hundreds, and you know. But I'm telling you to be aware of the laws in your state, and if it's against the law, don't do it, or don't talk about it, or create a fake account and ask your questions. But in some states, you know, you can do up to X amount of gallons, and so it's one of those things that a lot of times they don't really deal with in a lot of states unless it's in their face. I mean, if you're selling liquor and a cop sees you sell a jar, they're going to do something. You put it in their face, they have to. But as long as they don't see it, they're not necessarily, some aren't going to investigate and, you know, find out where all their liquors come from. You know, they don't give a fuck. They got a lot bigger fish to fry, and they got fentanyl, a lot of shit on the street that they got to get off, and a lot of criminals. You know, they got people running into Walmart, walking out with thousands of dollars of shit in their hands, and they're saying that's okay. Well, it's going to be hard telling them you can't make a quarter to a liquor on your stovetop, right? So as long as you don't have a real big steal, as long as you keep it on the down low, and just keep it between you and your buddies, and just drink with your buddies and friends, and don't advertise selling it on Facebook, and putting it out there, all your different flavors that you got. And I'm going to be in this city, next month, and this weekend I'm going to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I'll be there to quick stop. I'll be in the red pickup. Just come see me. Don't do that. You're going to get caught eventually. Somebody's going to say something, and most likely it's going to be a moonshiner in Elizabethtown that doesn't want you to come to his town and sell liquor. And by God, he's going to turn your ass in because you're taking money out of his pockets. And that's where a lot of the trouble comes in, is other shiners or you know, a lot of times neighbors, you know, they're afraid it's going to explode. You know, you always get that, like the pickle jars. So don't do the pickle jars. Yeah, right. So you can, and I hope that you're at least about 21 years. And I'm not talking. That's one of the things I don't like is I never know what age of somebody I'm talking to. But if you're 21, you can get on Amazon and eBay and pull up Vever and look for the football stills like what I just posted. And they've got like 8, 13, 18 and a half gallon ones. You know, one of those is plenty fine. You can do those on your stove top and yeah, yeah, it's definitely want to hold my beer experiment. Don't do it. But yeah, there's lots of homemade stills out there. You can use keg, beer keg. You know, you can take a beer keg and go to Philbilly and buy one of these towers. Now he'll make this with stainless or copper, whatever you want. You put the copper mesh inside there, like you see on that one. But get you a little column, and you can turn out some pretty high proof. Or you can use the regular football still there, the football head, whiskey head, to put out a little lower proof and a little more flavor with your bourbons and your brandies. But right there's all you need. Sitting on your stove, run your cold water in the bottom here, and your hot water comes out here, going back into your cooler where you keep your water cool. And your liquor comes out right here. Keep it to a steady drip. And you're good to go, bro. Yeah, I mean, there's milk cans. You know, there's lots of different. There's lots of ones. Yeah. Well, I tell you, there's South Carolina. You know that with ALE, they don't have a lot to do. You know, I can understand their situation. They're you know that's their job is to hunt out people that are making alcohol illegally. We know we're doing wrong. We know what we're doing. We're not supposed to do. You know, we choose to do it because we feel it's our right to do it. Some people feel, well, I think it's legal in my state, maybe, or I know the sheriff in this county won't bother me, or everybody has different levels of security, I guess. But when it all boils down to it, federally, you're not safe at all. So just be, don't get big, don't sell it, don't take it out of the house. Have buddies come over and hang out, watch the games, and drink, all you want, but just kind of keep it at that. Um, there's not that much money in selling moonshine. I mean, if you want to break the law selling something, there's a lot of things out there that you can make a hell of a lot more money selling that'll get you about the same time. Uh, so yeah, and I'm not saying drugs. I'm thinking, stolen cars or something, you know, TVs that you walk out of Walmart with or some of that shit. But I was uh, I was never afraid. Uh, well, I'll take it back. When I was a kid and we'd be out in the woods doing it, we'd hear something crack or branch crack. Man, we was on those motorcycles gone. We leave that shit going. We're out of there. We sneak back an hour later looking, see if anybody's there. Um, but when I did it in college, I did it in the dorm room. Um, never really cared, but never worried much about it. Never thought much about it because it was always just small and personal use kind of stuff. I never, you know, well, I can't say I never sold it, and I can't say I never ran a big still, but I never supported myself. Let's just put that way. I never supported myself, with moonshine. Um, I'm not gonna lie and say I've never sold a drop in my life. I've bartered, I've traded for weed and, a lot of things like that when I was young. And, but I've given away a lot more than I've sold. I've given away enough liquor in Maggie Valley to be a fucking run for mayor and get elected. Uh, but now I don't because I'm more worried about it there. But yeah, be careful in South Carolina. These not gonna knock them. They're just doing their jobs, guys. That's it. It sucks. Probably find a better job. Yeah, but they got that job and they swore an oath to do their job. So when you make it, you're doing it wrong. So when you get caught, just bite the bullet, pay your time, pay your price, and then make your decisions on what you're going to do after that. But we all know what we're going to do is wrong. So we can't blame the cops. They're doing their job. Blame the politicians for not making new laws, and and blame the judges and Supreme Court and all that. And promote it. When people want to try to talk to your congressman, talk to your senators and your representatives in your state first. Start with your state representatives. That's and Kentucky. It ain't never happened, of course, because we got every major distiller in the world here, and they don't want you doing this at home here in Kentucky. Because we got every big distillery in the world right here, right? Makes all the bourbon, whiskey, and majority of it. So yeah, Kentucky's going to be a long time before it's ever legal, but and maybe Tennessee because of Jack Daniels and stuff. But I see Tennessee before Kentucky. But um, just talk to your representatives, try to get some changes made in the laws. They did in Texas recently. West Virginia just made it legal in their state. So talk to some of your representatives. Just say, look, we want to be able to have a hobby like this. There's absolutely no reason this day and time that we can't, have this hobby. And, a lot of times they'll throw the safety bullshit out there. Trust me when I tell you, the government does not give a fuck about your safety, right? Um, they like regulations and they like fees and they like things that, you have to get inspected for safety purposes. They love those. But when it comes down to your personal safety, they really don't care. OSHA, you know, has fines and all that. But really, you might have a few individuals that care, but for the most part, they don't give a shit. But it's all about the Benjamins and licensing, fees, taxes. That's what it's all about. It's not about safety. So, or, if it was, then they'd make it legal and say, but before you do it, you have to have this class that you taught by the state that costs $150, and there's your Benjamins coming in, and then you can do it. If they do that, that's fine. Or you have to, you're forced to go listen to Bad Santa's podcast for, a month, and you have to show proof that you've asked questions. Yeah, maybe we can work me into that. Pay Santa to teach. Yeah, I like to sell that. I can go around to all the states and teach. Right, and I think we got to, we've got constitutional right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if making your own beer and wine, that falls under pursuit of happiness. All of a sudden, hard liquor doesn't because there's more alcohol, and that's what it's taxed by is the proof of alcohol. And it's all about the money. But there's an extra element of safety involved in distilling alcohol versus fermenting it. But education can fix a lot of that. I think it's definitely a pursuit of happiness, and it should be for a lot of people. And I'd like to see a lot of people get active, and the militia is, and talking to some of these politicians and stuff, and getting the word out, and getting it legal. I know that some people say if you're members of the Home Distillers Organization or Home Distillers something, that you may have a little extra layer of security to go through them. much like in the gun industry. I know, where was it, in yeah, it's in Texas. They were talking about having in-state silencers or suppressors that were built in-state, legal to sell in-state without going through the ATF process and getting a permit and all the tax stamp and all that, because it's not interstate business. It's not a federal concern, because it's all made within the state, sold within the state, and it stays within the state. And they're saying that if those conditions are met, federal don't seem to even be able to get their paws into it. And that's still, kind of going around in the in one of the people that brought it forward was the American Gun Association, AGA, or one of those big associations. And if you're in that association right now and you live in Texas, then you can buy a suppressor in Texas and use it in Texas until they rule on that. Now, they may rule that suppressor is now illegal and you're going to have to register that with the ATF, but they've taken away like the $200 fee, and that begins at the beginning of next year. So you'll be able to get a suppressor, as long as you're legally able to, and you won't have to pay the tax, but you'll still have to go through all the ATF documentation and talk to your local police and get the permission and all that shit that you have to. So you're still gonna have to do that. But one step, maybe eventually you'll just be able to make your own and do whatever the fuck you want to do. But maybe in 20 years and maybe never, who knows? I didn't think we'd ever get to this point where they'd waive the tax stamp fee, but they've done that. So that's progress. That's $200 saved for every one. So now you don't have to pay $200 for every suppressor that you get. And now that $500 suppressor doesn't sound so bad because it's not $700 anymore. It's $500. So, and once this goes through, and there's going to be a huge demand for them, technically, China or somebody could build a suppressor for $75, with the metal that's involved and the baffles and the 3D printing and stuff that you can do these days with it. I mean, the 3D printer, though, has to be a metallic. It can't just, I don't think the plastic ones hold up, so it has to be metallic, and that's a special printer. But, it, if it were legal to buy them and you didn't have to register them or anything, yeah, you'd probably get them for less than $100. Because there's not that much to them. It's just metal baffles inside a metal tube that, has a welded nut that you can screw on the end of your barrel, or you can, make one to, fit a flash suppressor or a mount, But yeah, way off topic. So yeah, you never know where I'm going, man. I can ramble on and get off topic in a heartbeat. Little ADD there. Yeah, and it's a big step too, getting your name out there too, because it was for me. Doing my first online and getting online and talking about it and doing it. Um, yeah, it was a big step. But I still don't show myself actually in the process of doing it. I know a lot of people still do that, and I might have or might not have done that at one time. I'm not going to say, but I don't think I would at this point in time, based on what's going on. I know some of these groups are private and small, and I doubt that they're infiltrated. But some of these groups, with 50, 100,000 people in it, and public, yeah. But it just becomes the question: is what I'm doing worth their time and effort? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to get much out of it, right? They're going to get a misdemeanor charge and a small fine, and that's it. And is it worth it? If you put it in their face, Yeah, if you're cool about it, you do it at home and you keep it at home and you're not out selling it and you're not transporting it across state lines and not doing a lot of crazy stuff, then I'd say the chances are getting much better. But I will say that the people that got caught, they got a little complacent, and I'm not going to knock them because everybody, I have too. And but I did learn. I did learn. And so I will say, if you're in South Carolina, be very careful, and create a fake account if you want to. I'm not going to try to make you paranoid or anything, but if you're going to get online and show what you got going on and talk about it, or make TikTok videos and get on YouTube and get in the public eye, make sure that you hide your face and change your name, man. Make it hard for them to find you because um, they don't have anything better to do. That's their job, and they sit around on Facebook watching our videos. Probably, maybe one watching this now. I understand what you got to do. You got to do your job. I understand. Yeah, we ain't got 500-gallon submarine pots and selling to half the county. You got cars coming up to our house and in a line in our driveway, Or, I remember going to the bootleggers growing up, man. I mean, the cops know where the fucking bootleggers are. They know where every one of them. Hell, half of them get their damn beer and liquor from them, because they drink too. But they let them know, we're going to be there Sunday and we're going to get arrested Sunday and you're going to have 10 cases of liquor and 20 cases of beer and you're going to get X amount of fine. You're going to sit in jail for the weekend. And that's just how it's going to be. And they hide the rest of their shit. They put the 10 cases of liquor out there, 20 cases of beer. The cops come by, confiscate. They get a few $100s and they get all that liquor. It looks great in the newspaper. And all the pastors are happy. They're preaching about it. And all the newspapers are happy. They're writing about it. And all the taxpayers, oh, we're getting our money's worth. They're keeping that stuff off the street. The next day, they're right back in business. I mean, there's one we used to drive up on our bicycles. And kids, as long as you got the money, you get that half pint early time, or at pint, or at PBR or Schlitz. But hell, one of them had a damn rubber line, like a gas station. When you run over it, it ding dings in their driveway, and they had like a window, like a drive up window at a McDonald's, and a doorbell right next to it. And if the bell didn't get them, then you hit that doorbell, and they'll come to the window. What do you want? Just sell it right out the window, just like a liquor store. So they know about that. So it's just what it is. You just got to be cool about it. Just don't put it in their face and force them. Don't call their hand. Don't force them to do something. Don't put it in their face and laugh at them. Show them some respect. Awesome. How did your gin turn out? Love hearing people from all over the world, man. I mean, this is another one of the, 95% that that I never hear from, that watch the show and watch it during the week sometime and pick it up, not live, but at some other point in time. It's awesome, man. We got people all over New Zealand, Australia, England, Scotland, Ireland, South Africa. It's awesome, man. I'm glad. Love learning about their cultures and what they like to make too. So that's what, anytime I run into some of them. What are some South African alcohols that y'all make that are unique? That is there certain plants that you make brandies from and wines from and fruits that are indigenous to there that we probably don't have here? I'm Googling. Okay, I'm Googling because I don't know a lot about South Africa. Uh, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know about South African fruits and stuff. So I'm gonna Google. It's like my second or third time tonight, man. I love it, man. Because anytime I Google from now on, I'm definitely gonna call it out. I don't do it a lot, but I'll do it to help when I don't know. And I don't know about a lot about what they do in South Africa, and I don't know a lot about fruits and stuff. I do know that I did see this video, and I'm trying to think of the name of the tree. Now here's where my memory comes in bad. But there was this video of all these animals, and this tree drops its fruit every year, and it has to be really high in sugars, and it has a lot of wild yeast around it, I guess, from all the years that it's dropping this fruit, and it breaks it down, right? These yeasts are fermenting this fruit on the tree, and as it drops, and elephants are eating it, monkeys, I mean, all the animals, they get along. They ain't there to hunt, eat each other. No, I mean, they all come there. It's like truce. And we're just going to eat the fruit. We're going to get drunk, and nobody's going to eat each other, right? So, I mean, you got every animal, and they're all munching down on this shit. I mean, man, they're getting drunk and shit. There's some videos of it. I don't know if y'all have seen them or not, but I'm Googling the tree now. So, yes, I'm Googling. I think it started with a T, something Texan. No, it's a marula tree. South African trees whose fruit is said to intoxicate animals is the marula tree. Well, it's widespread legend now. No, it's not a legend. I've seen it live, folks. They set up cameras around it. So this is saying it's a myth. Well, I got a buster for you, and it's on freaking YouTube, and right here it is, man. And this ain't AI either. And I'm going to share this string with you all. If I can get back over here, and then I'm gonna have to turn the volume up some. Share screen. Share screen. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, skip
this. Affluent society have become blasé and bored with life. Things are just too easy in the Kavango Basin. They no longer have a zest for living like their country cousins out there in the inhospitable desert.
Well, it's only 4 minutes, so yeah, we'll watch this. Watch this. This is
here,
awesome.
Life offers no challenge, and many of them have become slobs and easy riders.
Can y'all hear it okay? Volume and everything? Maybe not. Can y'all hear
the
it?
only excitement in their lives comes in high summer when the marula trees
marula fruits. All right, so this is what this is about.
At first, the marulas are very tasty and hard to get at. You have to be either agile or strong to get your share.
Man, 360p. Come on, YouTube.
But after a few weeks, the marulas get overripe and they start dropping.
Look at that. Look at all those fruits, man.
Then all the animals wade in and gorge themselves.
Look at this. All these animals, they didn't fight at all. Look at them. They'll just sit and gorge on this stuff. Look at them.
It starts fermenting in their tummies and turns into a very potent brew. So on the way home, things start happening to them.
That's a hammered elephant, man. Look at this strap. Oh, it's funny as shit, man. Watch this. Warthogs. They say it's a myth. That shows you, hey, I don't know shit. Because this proves it, man. I mean, this is live video of these animals eating this shit and getting hammered. Watch this dude. He falls over. And this is the marula tree he's talking about. I would love to try some of this just because of this video. Look at him. He's trying to just laying on the ground, passed out, trying to pick the last fruit he can reach, man. That's fucking funny as shit. Oh, that's funny. That's funny shit. Yeah. It's not those fruits doing that. They just act like this because they're happy, right? Saying it's a myth. Did you see he reached out for that last one? Oh, that's awesome.
When night falls, there's peace again.
Everybody's
a very blissful peace.
Passed out. All right. So everybody's passed out. All right. That's cool as fuck. But yeah, that's the marula tree that he's talking about. There's grapes and marula fruits. I'm just wondering if there's not other fruits that I don't know about. You know, you always wonder. There's always that one that we're not familiar with, right? So marula. Awesome. So what does a marula fruit, does it taste like? Is it like a mango or? Yeah. Fighting over the fruit. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, that's marula. I love how that AI said, oh, it's just a myth. Yeah, because the very large quantities that they would, bullshit. Once those fruits, once they ferment, just on their own sugars with the wild yeast and their own sugars, they'll be like a beer, right? They'll have 6%, you know, just like a, a not so good mash, you know, 104050, just like a weak beer, but you know, 4%, 5% like a beer. So each of those fruits is like a beer. You know, it's like the equivalent of beer. And, you know, a lot of those animals can't handle a lot of beer. So yeah, it's not. Can't believe AI like, oh, it's a myth. They would have to eat so much. It just shows what AI is not always doesn't always have the right answers for stuff. Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, that's you know, Alan. That's where Alan Bishop. He has a lot broader knowledge as far as the history of a lot of. You know, of course, he does this for a living, but he's done it since he was a kid like me. But he's done it for a living. He's younger though. But he knows a lot about you know what different a lot of different um, like absinthe and things. I've never done an absinthe yet. And a lot of liquors and things that have done in other countries, you know, that I don't know. That's something I'm learning now and you know, love learning about. And the methods that a lot of them do it. You know, I've seen a lot of the methodology and learning a lot about that. So I'm learning. We're all learning. But he knows a lot about some of that stuff that's done in other lands and the history of things that I'm not so knowledgeable about. You know, the science as far as what's going on in fermentation and all that, I've got that pretty much down. But a lot of the history of stuff in different distillates from different countries and the fruits that they use. That's what I'm trying to learn more myself. Definitely love that stuff. But that's good. That's a good ending points. 3 hours in and 11 o'clock, and maybe get a little video to watch and to go out on. And got to meet the Bang Maguni and Juni. I know I'm butchering your name, brother, and I'm sorry. But great having you on here. and we're here every Wednesday and Saturday unless something comes up. If there's a festival or something I won't be on, rare occasions, sometimes I don't feel good and I won't be on. That's not been that way for a while, but Wednesday had Phil Billy did an interview, so I wasn't on for that. But we definitely try to do every Wednesday and Saturday and do a good Q&A and people can come in and talk about what they got going on and any issues that they're running into and things like that. And we try to help them. So that's what we're all about. And just sitting around drinking, talking, shooting the shit. And it's a lot of fun doing that as well, whether you learn anything or not. It's always a good time. And try to do something entertaining. We got a little entertainment from the drunk monkeys and the elephants and the giraffes. That's funny shit. I've seen that video a couple of times and I thought it was cool as shit. And when I saw the bang on here, man, I had to pick his brain about that marula fruit. Marula. I thought it started with a T. Marula. I'm gonna try to say it enough times where I'll remember the marula tree. And but we don't get those fruits here. So I'm guessing maybe close to a mango-ish. Kind of looked like a little mango, didn't it? So maybe it's something like that. But it's always interesting to see how they do it in different countries. I've seen them, in some African countries using clay pots and kind of like an alembic, but it's a hardened clay, like you put it in the kiln and harden it. It's like an urn basically. But these hardened clay pots and they've got inside a concave lid that comes down to a point, and inside there they've got a tube like shooting through bamboo through the side of the pot that catches the drips off the little point inside the lid, and it catches those drips and sends it through the tube, and turns out some high proof alcohol. Man, it's very interesting to see all the different apparatuses that are used all over the world and how they do it. But everybody be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, especially on YouTube, because they send out the notifications pretty well. Every time I start the podcast, I get the ding ding from both YouTube videos channels that we stream to, the Militia page and Field Billy's page. So subscribe to one or both of those. And if you do pretty much everything on YouTube, at the bottom you'll see where it says on the podcast, you'll see where it says Distilling 101 podcast page. Just click on that, and on that page you'll see 3 dots. Click on that and hit the follow button. Subscribe, notifications. It'll send you a ding every time we do our thing. But do hit the like button and join that page, because it does help me, and it gets me on more reels, Facebook reels. I want to get on those so we get more people in here. I want to get more people coming here for questions and answers and grow the hobby for a lot of people, make it more enjoyable for a lot of people, because I know we got tens of thousands on Facebook, hundreds of thousands actually on Facebook that are seeking the knowledge, and they just don't know where to go to get it, and they're afraid to ask, so they're limited to watching videos. So watching these will help a lot, because everybody has the same questions, and I'm going to try to do another beginning to end thing like I did before. I don't like doing those because it's hard for me to answer questions, because I get confused. I know where I'm at in explaining things, but if I have to stop, answer a question about something totally different, unrelated, it's hard for me to remember where I was and pick back up on it. So, and that's a lot of times too, if you see me interrupt somebody, it's because I got that thought and I got to get it out now, because if I don't, I'm old and I'm forgetful and I'll forget that shit. So a lot of times, I'll just have to get that out and say it, and people can go on about their business and talk what they were talking about. But if I have something to say, I like getting it out, because I forget. I'm very forgetful. It's getting worse. So that comes with age. So I guess there'll be a time and day that I'm not going to be able to do this show anymore. And I guess Clint and Scott's going to have to, pick up the slack when that day comes. Hopefully it'll be a long time coming, but there will be a day and time. And old Santa's just can't remember anything anymore, and I don't want to Google everything and be one of those. So, but We love y'all. Glad everybody comes out. I have a great time, chatting with everybody. It's something I enjoy doing. It's, again, I'm not made the first penny doing this. Don't ask for nothing. Just for people to come share the knowledge with their friends and share the site with their friends and share your liquor with your friends. And that's awesome, brother. I'm glad to hear it, Faded. Let us know how it comes out, man. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock we start, and every Saturday night at 8 o'clock Eastern. So come back if you got any questions. We'll be happy to answer them. And I know you get a lot watching me and Phil Billy's, watch the podcast or watching his streams and stuff that he does. So keep watching, keep liking, keep sharing it with everybody, and we'll see you all, I guess, Wednesday. And we'll try to do a beginning to end. It'll be Wednesday the 3rd. We'll try to do a beginning to end wine. I've been talking about doing that. I've been doing a little beginning to end kind of how to on grains, but it's getting pretty involved. So maybe we'll just stop and do a beginning to end on a typical grape brandy, or we'll pick a fruit, maybe a peach brandy or something like that, and do a beginning to end for everybody on that, and be able to answer questions on that. So maybe we'll try to do that Wednesday. Maybe we'll get Mash Brothers in here with us. Get up with me. You got my info on Facebook, right? Or holler at me on the militia page. I'm admin in there, so I'm easy found. It's not like, not like I got this big ass beard and a Santa hat, But yeah, look me up on the militia page, and we can make arrangements. Maybe talk about peach brandies Wednesday if you want to get on here. If not, I understand. But I'm definitely going to check out your channel. And I didn't see you post a link to it. So I don't mind that. I don't want people posting links that, here's my sister's page. She does, this or that. Nah, I don't want that. But anything that's from a regular here that wants to share the knowledge and is all about education, I'm more than happy to help them any way I can. And if you want to, post your link to your page on here. I'm not saying every podcast do it 15 times and flood the pages. A lot of people try that shit, and we delete it. But yeah, if you wanna post your link here, Mash Brothers, and let some people here maybe watch some of your videos and stuff, then I'd be happy for you to post your link, brother. So go right ahead. I know you're in the militia already, so. But that's all we got for tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys on Gals on Wednesday, not Timmy. We got Gals on here too. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see y'all on Wednesday. Peace out. Shout on.